Chapter 892. At the beginning of the new year, Feng Ong was fighting with Tan Dian and hadn't entered the court for a long time. The various prefectures reported Feng Ang's rebellion more than 10 times. Li Er planned to send the general of the Right Guards, Lin Mu, and the others to the Jiang and Ling provinces to suppress him. Wei Jing advised, the Central Plains has just been pacified. Lingnan is far away and the terrain is dangerous. There is miasma and plagues, so we can't station a large army there. Also, Feng Ang's rebellion hasn't formed yet, so it's not good to mobilize a large army. Li Er said, there is an endless stream of people reporting Feng Ang's rebellion. How can you say that the rebellion hasn't formed yet? Wei Zheng replied, if Feng Ong rebelled, he would have split up his troops to occupy the strategic areas and attack the neighboring provinces. It's been a few years since he's been reported, but the Feng troops haven't left the country yet. There are no signs of rebellion. The various prefectures already suspect that the Feng family is rebelling, but His Majesty hasn't sent an envoy to appease them. The Feng family is afraid of death, so they don't dare to come to the court. If His Majesty sends an envoy to show his sincerity, the Feng family will be happy to avoid trouble. This way, they won't have to use the army to make him obedient. Thus, Li Er ordered the troops to withdraw. At the same time, he sent Wei Shuxuan and Li Gongyan to Lingnan to express their condolences to Feng Ong. At the end of the 10th month, as Wei Zheng expected, Feng Ong sent his second son to the capital to show his loyalty. In essence, he used his second son as a hostage to express his intention to surrender. After asking about the cause and effect of the incident, Li Zishuan mounted his horse and slowly moved forward. He fell into deep thought. Li Zishuan, who had read a few transmigrating Tang novels in his previous life, knew a little about Feng Ong. This person was the undisputed king of Lingnan. The so-called Lingnan referred to the 5 ridges: Yueqing Ridge, Dupong Ridge, Mengzhu Ridge, Qitian Ridge, and Dayu Ridge in southern China. It included all of modern Guangdong, most of Guangxi, southeastern Yunnan, and northern Vietnam. Feng Ang's father used to be the governor of Gaozhou. At first, he used his ancestors' merits to become the county magistrate of Songkang. In the second year of Rinshou's second year, Chao, Cheng, and the other provinces rebelled. At that time, Feng Ong personally went to the capital to ask for an imperial decree. Emperor Wen summoned his left servant Yang Su to discuss the enemy's situation with him. Feng Ang's analysis was clear and logical. Yang Su was very surprised. Thus, he ordered Feng Yi to lead the Jiangling troops on a crusade. After the rebellion was quelled, he was given the title of Golden Purple Guanglu Daifu and Hanyang Prefect. In the 7th year of Dai, Feng Ong followed Emperor Yang to Liaodong and was later promoted to general of the left Wei. In the 2nd year of Yining, the Sui dynasty was destroyed. Feng Ong and his second son, Feng Zhidai, fled back to Lingnan. They gathered the chiefs of the various tribes and had 50,000 soldiers to guard the land and prevent chaos. Not long after, Feng Ong used Kangwu, Gaoyang, Zhuya, and Panyu regions to rely on Lin Shihong, who had set up a separatist regime in Lingnan. In the 3rd year of Tang Wuda's reign, Gao Faqing and Xian Baoche of Panyu and Xinzhou rose up and killed the officials of the imperial court. Feng Ong led his troops to quell the rebellion of Gao and Xian. Later on, Xian Baoche's nephew, Xian Zhichen, gathered his troops at Xinzhou and refused to fight. Feng Ong led his troops on an expedition. During the battle, Feng Ong took off his armor and shouted, "Do you know me?" When Xian Zhichen's soldiers saw that it was the famous Feng Ong, they immediately put down their weapons and knelt down to surrender. Xian Baoche, Xian Zhichen, and the others were all captured by Feng Ong. From then on, from Panyu to Kangwu Guangxi Wuzhou, to Zhuya, Liezhou Peninsula, and Hainan Island, they all submitted to Feng Ong. Feng Ong proclaimed himself to be the chief steward. He ruled over 20 prefectures and thousands of li of land. His territory was even larger than Zhao Tuo's. Martial Emperor of Southyu, Qin Dynasty's Southern Sea Dragon Chuan commander, founder of Southyu Kingdom, and former Qin Dynasty general. He was the undisputed king of Lingnan. Not simple. This matter shouldn't be as simple as it seems on the surface. Li Zishuan sat on his horse and muttered softly. Heroes were born in troubled times. For Feng Ong to be able to rule Lingnan and govern it well, he was definitely not an easy person. It was not an exaggeration to call him a hero of a generation. Li Zishuan believed that such a person would not be as cowardly as Wei Zheng said to Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan did not believe that Madame Feng was afraid of death and did not dare to come to the imperial court. This time, when Feng Ong sent Feng Jidai to the capital, in the eyes of others, it might be Feng Ong showing his loyalty to Li Er by sending his son over as a hostage. However, in Li Zishuan's eyes, this move might not be without the intention of spying on the imperial court. Li Zishuan had always disdained those who sent their sons to the capital as hostages to show their loyalty. A few hundred years later, Zhu Di sent his sons to Jinling as hostages to the Jiangwen emperor. Was that enough to show his loyalty? In the end, he still usurped the throne. If someone really wanted to rebel, they would not stop just because their sons were in someone else's hands. Moreover, Li Zishuan had heard that Feng Ong had more than 30 sons. If he really wanted to rebel against the imperial court, would he give up his throne for a son? Obviously not. Li Zishuan was not measuring the stature of a gentleman with his own yardstick. It was just that in this feudal era, he felt that there were very few people in the world who had no ambition like him. There were even fewer people who had great power but no ambition. Lingnan was a dangerous place, and the emperor was far away. Li Zishuan did not believe that Feng Ong did not have the slightest bit of ambition in his heart. Your Majesty, Feng Ong has sent his second son to Chang'an. He is now outside the palace and asking for an audience. In Ganlu Palace, Li Er had just finished his afternoon nap. Zhao Song hurried in and bowed before he could even warm his seat on the dragon bed. Li Er was shocked. He narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself, "They're finally here." Feng Zhichen and his men had to pass through more than 10 prefectures from Lingnan to Chang'an. As the supreme ruler of the world, there was no way that Li Er did not receive the news in advance. Summon. After a few breaths, Li Er came back to his senses and ordered, "Yes, Your Majesty." After a while, a bronze-skinned, tall, and strong young man walked in. Although he was tall and strong, his clothes and hair accessories made him look like a Han Chinese scholar. Apart from being bold and strong, there was also a hint of elegance. "Your subject, Feng Zhichen, pays his respects to Your Majesty." The young man walked up to Li Er, bowed deeply, and said respectfully. Li Er looked at Feng Zhichen for a while before smiling. "At ease. Tianxi must be tired from the journey. Why don't you rest at the inn for a few days before coming to see me?" Feng Zhichen, courtesy name Tianxi, courtesy name Fian. Feng Zhichen immediately bowed and said very sincerely, "Your Majesty, my father is being attacked by scoundrels. As a son, there is no time that I do not want to help my father clear his name as soon as possible so that Your Majesty will not be suspicious. Therefore, I rushed all the way here to ask for forgiveness on behalf of my father. How would I dare to rest at the inn? Here is a letter written by my father. It explains the situation in Lingnan in detail. I hope Your Majesty can read it." At this point, Feng Zhichen took out a painted letter from his sleeve and raised it above his head with both hands in a very respectful manner. Chapter 893. In the Ganlu Palace, Zhao Song took the letter from Feng Jidai and used his internal energy to check it. After confirming that there was no problem, he handed it to Li Er. Li Er opened the envelope, calmed himself down, and began to read it carefully. The palace fell into silence. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Half an hour later, Li Er put down the letter and raised his head to look at Feng Jidai. With a kind smile, he said, "I've finished reading Duke Geng's letter. As for the matter of the provinces accusing your father, I'll have someone investigate it thoroughly and give your family an explanation." In fact, the content of the letter was not important. It was enough that Feng Ong was willing to send his son to Chang and to show his loyalty. The rumors of rebellion would be dispelled. Feng Jidai cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for trusting my father, Your Majesty." Lier waved his hand and smiled. Hai Duke Gung is loyal to the country. He guarded Lingnan for many years and made hundreds of thousands of people in Lingnan live in peace. His contributions cannot go unnoticed. I'll remember all these. Tianxi, you must be tired from your long journey. Go to the post house and have a good rest. I'll arrange a position for you tomorrow morning. Feng Yang's letter clearly stated that Feng Zhidai would stay in Chang and accompany Lier from now on. Feng Zhidai did not show any surprise. Obviously, he already knew about Feng Yang's arrangement. He quickly cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. I'll take my leave." He took the official seal from the Ministry of Personnel Affairs and asked someone to send the Kung Fu/non-Kung Fu football management rules that Li Er asked him to write to the palace. According to the type of game, there were strict rules on the behavior of the players. Anyone who violated the rules would be severely punished. It was considered a regulation of the Tang Empire's football to reduce malicious behavior on the football field. When he returned to the academy, the bearded man reported, "Yamacho, after the Datong Daily was sent out today, 28 people came to register their teams and receive their football." Li Zixuan had asked Zhang Zhongjian, the PE teacher of the academy, to manage the affairs of the football association. This bearded man looked rough and uncouth, but if one talked to him in detail, one would find that he was not only uncouth, but also proficient in the art of war and strategy. Which uncouth from Jianghu could be better than him? Li Zixuan personally poured a cup of wine for the bearded man because he knew that the bearded man did not like to drink tea like himself. In comparison, the old man preferred to drink strong alcohol like drunken immortal. However, where would Li Zixuan's office have such a thing? The bearded guest took the wine glass. Li Zixuan then said, "I didn't expect so many people to have formed their teams today." The bearded man grinned and said disdainfully, "Hey, from what I see, these people are most likely here for the football. They formed a team, came here to take the football at a cheap price, and then took it out to sell. They can make at least 50 strings of cash. Then they can just find a reason to disband the team. Wouldn't they be making 50 strings of cash for nothing? Yamacho, I see that your method doesn't seem to work. You should change it. Otherwise, wouldn't you be benefiting those villains for nothing?" Scalpers. When the bearded man said this, Li Zixuan instantly thought of the scalpers in his previous life. He did not expect that there would be such annoying people in ancient times. 50 strings of cash for a football. The workshop would still make a lot of money, but Li Zixuan did not want these scalpers to make his money and thus disrupt the market. Then in Mr. Zhang San's opinion, how should we prevent these people from maliciously reselling the football? Li Zixuan asked modestly. Recently, when he had nothing to do, he had chatted with the bearded man many times. He was mainly asking the bearded man for advice on the art of war and strategy. The master of this body, spiritual master Ling Su, had taught him some military tactics, but it was not comprehensive. The bearded man, who was once all-powerful and wanted to compete with Li Er for the world, had entered the academy. Of course, he had to seize the opportunity to get some useful information from the bearded man. Although he did not intend to go to the battlefield, who knew what would happen in the future? One must know that in the face of war, the role of individual bravery was very limited. Even if he became a great grandmaster, he could not rely on his own ability to determine the outcome of a war. Besides, there was no harm in learning more skills. Of course, it was not only him who learned from the bearded man. As a person of two lives, spiritual master Ling Su had also taught him some military tactics in this life. Sometimes, the bearded man felt that his views had benefited a lot. Therefore, the bearded man was usually very willing to ask Li Zixuan for advice on the art of war. At this moment, when he heard Li Zixuan's question, the bearded man seemed to have been prepared. He answered without thinking, "In my opinion, Yamacho, you should add a clause to the original notice. Any team that comes here to register and collect the football must ensure that the team has been maintained for more than a year. If there is a violation, the Football Association will cooperate with the government to pursue the responsibility." Li Zixuan raised his eyebrows and said, Cooperate with the government? Mr. Zhang-san, we have no way to mobilize the government. The bearded man chuckled and said, Yamacho, His Majesty personally issued a decree for the Football Association to manage all the affairs of the Tang Empire. The local government naturally has the responsibility to cooperate. Even if they don't cooperate, with Yamacho's current imperial favor, it is easy for you to go to the palace and ask for an imperial edict. Besides, I don't think that the government will deliberately offend you for such a small matter. After that, he rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, Since ancient times, the people have been afraid of the government. We can scare away most of the businessmen who want to speculate by just saying that. The deterrent power of this notice is greater than its meaning. Li Zixuan suddenly understood. He secretly thought that this old man was indeed full of guts. A small notice could make him play psychological warfare. It was a waste of his talent to be a pirate at sea. Mr. Zhang-san is very talented. This junior admires you. In a while, I will have someone modify the original notice according to your meaning. Li Zixuan cupped his hands and said politely, Ha, Yamacho, you flatter me. This is just a small trick. Besides, the people who came to pick up the football are not purely speculating. I reckon that there are many who sincerely want to start a football team. After all, Yamacho, this football you made is really interesting. A few of my little bastards came to me today to ask for a football to play with, but I kicked them away. The bearded man stroked his beard and laughed. Mr. Zhang-san, you don't have to be like this. If your brothers want to play football, you could just give them a few. It's not worth much. Li Zixuan persuaded. The bearded man waved his hand and said resentfully, I can't give it to you. I can't give it to you. When these little bastards heard that I was going to be a teacher at the academy, they almost want to slit their own throats. They felt that I had embarrassed them, and now they want to ask me for a football? No way. Chapter 894. Back then, the bearded man had agreed to Li Zixuan's request to stay in the academy as a private individual, so he was the only one who stayed in the academy. Most of his subordinates were still at sea helping him manage his family business, while a small number followed him to Chang, wanting to stay behind to take care of him. It was impossible to say that all of these people agreed to let the bearded man stay at the academy as a guard for a year. There would definitely be voices of opposition. However, the bearded man had been at sea for so many years and had long been infamous. Even if they didn't agree in their hearts, they didn't dare to say it out loud. However, later on, these pirates heard that the bearded man had become a teacher at the academy. Moreover, they had stayed in Chang'an for so long and had heard a lot about Yanhuang College. As a result, they weren't so opposed to their boss staying at Yanhuang College. Moreover, the bearded man had told them that as long as they stayed at the academy for a year, they would be able to obtain detailed sea maps of all the seas. At that time, the world was so big that they could go anywhere. Recently, they heard about the new sport of football. Moreover, the bearded man was a manager of the Football Association, so they thought of coming over to ask for a football to play with. After all, they were new here and were unfamiliar with the place. Even if they were to line up at the strange interest pavilion, they reckoned that they wouldn't be able to find the right door. Even if they found the right door, they wouldn't be able to line up faster than those rich young masters with membership cards. However, they never expected that after their boss found out about the situation, he actually chased them out without saying a word. The affairs of the world were truly unpredictable. Then I wonder how Mr. Zhang-san feels about his life at the academy? Li Zixuan asked tentatively. The bearded man looked deeply at Li Zixuan and then laughed loudly. Ha! Yamacho, don't try to test me. Since I, Zhang Zhongjian, have agreed to stay at the academy for a year, then I will definitely fulfill my responsibilities within this year. Yamacho, if you wanted to go east, I definitely won't go west. Besides, I have good wine to drink and fresh meat to eat in the academy. My days here can be considered carefree and happy. If it weren't for the fact that I still want to wander the sea for a few more years, I'd rather retire on the Cloud Mountain. Li Zixuan's expression did not change when his thoughts were seen through. He smiled and said, Well, when Mr. Zhang-san is tired of life at sea, The Academy will always welcome you back. Huh. Then I would like to thank you, Macho. The bearded man's eyes flashed. He raised his wine cup and saluted Li Zixuan from afar. Then he laughed loudly. He wasn't kidding when he said that he wanted to retire at Yanhuang College. He had long known that Li Zixuan was an extraordinary person. Yanhuang College would one day become the holy land of learning in Tang Empire. He would have no regrets if he could retire at such a place. Your Majesty, is there something on your mind? At midnight, in the west court of the Imperial Palace, the Empress' bedroom, Empress Zhang's son, who had rested for more than 2 hours, inadvertently woke up. She found that Lier, who was lying beside her, was still awake. His dark eyes reflected the light of the fire outside the bedroom, looking particularly bright. She was moved and asked aloud, "Oh, Mei Guanyin, why are you awake now? Is it because No, Your Majesty, I woke up by myself." Empress Zhang's son hurriedly explained without waiting for Lier to finish. "Oh." Lier leaned against the headboard and sighed faintly. After a while, he said, "Today, Feng Ong sent his son to the capital. I met his son in the afternoon. Like father, like son." Empress Zhang's son was also a quick-witted person. She thought about it and understood what Lier was worried about. So she said, "Your Majesty, are you worried about Lingnan? But since Feng Ong is willing to send his son to the capital, it means that he has no disloyalty to Your Majesty. Why are you still worried?" Lier shook his head and said in a dull voice, "Feng Ong would rather send his most valued son to Chang and as a hostage than to personally come to Chang and to see me. I feel uneasy. Just because he is a hostage doesn't mean that he has no ambition. In the past, Qin Shi Huang's father Qin Zhuangxiang, Qin Shi Huang's great-grandfather Qin Zhaoxiang, and Yin Crown Prince Dan of the Warring States period were all hostages. But what happened later proved that all of them were ambitious people. It's really hard to guess what Feng Ong is thinking." Empress Zhang's son was silent for a while and then comforted, "Your Majesty, why are you so worried? At present, my great Tang's treasury is abundant, and we have produced many talented people. We also have no shortage of brave and skilled generals. Even if Feng Ong is disloyal and decides to take the risk, this servant is confident that he is no match for the imperial court. Your Highness should relax and rest early." Lier nodded and praised. "Maid Guanyin is right. I only hope that Feng Ong can understand the current situation. Otherwise, the Tang Empire will fall into serious internal friction." The next day, a piece of news in Datong Daily once again caused an uproar in Chang'an. It was Ma Zhou who sorted out the content of Li Zixuan's class yesterday morning. After Li Zixuan approved it, it was published on the front page of Datong Daily. The title was Engineering New World. What? How could a small needle-throwing game calculate the approximate value of the ancestral rate? How is that possible? That's right. That's the ancestral rate. How can it be calculated so easily? The newspaper must be bragging. Yes, it's bragging. Hey, that's not right, is it? If you don't believe it, you can follow what the newspaper said and do it yourself. You didn't even do it yourself. Why do you have to say that the newspaper is bragging? That's right. If you don't believe it, you can find a few hundred people to do an experiment. Let's do it. When I return to the Imperial College, I will gather my classmates to do a needle game for you to see." After saying that, this person left with his companions. TSK, so it's from the Imperial College. When the Duke of Yong and was teaching at the Imperial College, it was really lively there. What a pity. Now, our Honglan Library is still using the blackboard chalk invented by the Duke of Yong'an. We still use the Dictionary of Tang Dynasty compiled by the Duke of Yong'an. Many people reminisced about the time when Li Zixuan was teaching at the Imperial College. Hey, look, this news isn't over yet. The Duke of Yong and can create rainbows. There's even a metal box to send messages. The Duke of Yong and said that this thing can allow two people thousands of miles apart to communicate. Hiss, that's too magical. The Duke of Yong and can even turn water into two types of gas. One can make iron burn, and the other can explode upon contact with fire. This is like magic. This piece of news Engineering, a new world, really brought everyone into a new world. The influence of engineering once again spread. Chapter 895. When the news from the Tang Daily reached the Imperial College, it caused another uproar, especially in the School of Mathematics, which caused an unprecedented shock. Li Zixuan had resigned in anger. Not only did he take all the students from the School of Mathematics, but he also poached the original teacher, Su Hongji. The School of Mathematics was once in an awkward situation where there were no teachers or students. Left with no choice, Kong Ingda personally came forward and invited the retired professor of mathematics, Lu Hongyuan, Su Hongji's mentor, to come out of seclusion once again. He also selected a group of students from the various prefectures to fill in the gaps. After all, the majority of students were still willing to go to the Imperial College these days. Although Yanhuang Academy was very famous now, its reputation among the people was still not as good as the Imperial College, the #1 official school of the Tang Empire. It was worth mentioning that the enrollment scale of the School of Mathematics this time was about 2 times larger than before. A total of 71 students were recruited. It was as if they wanted to compete with Yanhuang College in the field of mathematics. Other than the increase in students, Kong Ingda also hired 3 teaching assistants to help Lu Honyuan teach the School of Mathematics. Therefore, the School of Mathematics was now more than 1 level higher than before in terms of both the number of students and the number of teachers. Inside the School of Mathematics. Hey, did you hear? The Marquis of Yong and made a simple needle-throwing game and was able to calculate the approximate value of the ancestral rate. It's amazing. I saw the newspaper, but I think it must be a coincidence. After all, whether the needle is thrown or not depends on luck. He was able to get such a result because of luck. I also think it's a coincidence. If he did it again, the result would definitely be different. I don't think so, since the Marquis of Yong and dared to announce this experiment on Tang Daily. He must be prepared to be questioned. This means that this experiment can be questioned. Speaking of which, why isn't Mr. Lu here yet? In the past, he would have already arrived at this time. Mr. Lu is here, Mr. Lu is here. Just as the students were discussing, an old man in white clothes made of rough cloth came in. Together with his white hair, he looked inexplicably weathered. There were 3 middle-aged scholars following behind the old man. They all deliberately stayed half a step behind the old man to show their respect. The classroom, which had been noisy just now, suddenly became quiet. Huh, this old man heard you all talking about the needle experiment in a newspaper just now. Presumably, you all want to know whether the results in the newspaper are a coincidence or not, right? The old man stood on the podium and chuckled as he looked at the students below. This old man was Lu Honyuan. He had already reached the age where he could enjoy the rest of his life, but he was invited back. He had stayed in the Imperial College for more than 10 years, so he was still reluctant to leave this place. No students responded. After being in the Imperial College for so long, they all knew that the majority of the teachers in the Imperial College did not like students discussing matters related to Li Zixuan. This was already an unspoken fact. Although they couldn't make a sound, the students' eyes were all shining as they looked at Lu Hongyuan. Lu Hongyuan did not have any prejudice against Li Zixuan. On the contrary, he had bought a copy of Li Zixuan's new mathematics textbook and studied it. Seeing that the students wanted to speak but did not dare to, he smiled and said, "Actually, it's not just you all who want to know. This old man also wants to know whether the results obtained by the Marquis of Yong are a coincidence." Before class, this old man prepared a piece of paper with lines drawn on it and a bag of thin needles. The distance between the lines and the length of the needles are exactly as described in the newspaper. Thus, today, our Imperial College will also conduct a needle experiment to see if the results in the newspaper are a coincidence. As Lu Honyuan spoke, he took a gray cloth bag from an assistant teacher. Inside was a piece of paper with lines drawn on it and a bag of thin needles. The reason why he was late for class today was to prepare these 2 things. When the students heard this, they could not help but whisper among themselves. Wow, we are also going to conduct a needle experiment? Mr. Lu is really open-minded. Hey, if we can prove that the results in the newspaper are a coincidence, Won't our Imperial College become famous this time? Ha! In my opinion, is most likely a coincidence. Ha! I don't think so. Lu Hongyuan patted the table and signaled for the students to be quiet. Then he said, there are a total of 71 students in the Imperial College of Mathematics. The number is still a little small. In order to match the total number of needles in the newspaper, you will all come up in order to cast the needles. Each of you will cast 10 times. Be careful not to use too much force and throw the thin needles out of the paper. The 3 teachers and I will help you count the number of times you cast the thin needles. Yao Yuanhe, come up. We will start with you. Then, Lu Hongyuan spread out the paper and instructed a student sitting at the door. Yes, Mr. Lu. The student responded and ran up excitedly. The other 3 assistant teachers took a pen and paper and stood behind Lu Hongyuan, ready to take notes. The verification experiment of the needle-throwing experiment was officially launched in the Imperial College of Mathematics. The whole experiment lasted for more than an hour before it was announced to be over. Since it was a real-time count, the assistant teachers immediately counted the number of needles cast by the students each time they cast the thin needles. Therefore, the final results were tabulated not long after the experiment ended. Lu Hongyuan checked his own statistical results with the 3 assistant teachers. When he found that the results were the same, he turned to the students and said, we have a total of 71 students. Each of you cast 10 times, which means that you cast 710 times in total. After the 3 teachers, and I tabulated, you cast the thin needles in the center line a total of 226 times. As soon as his voice fell, a student with a slightly better memory immediately exclaimed, 710, 226. The results on the newspaper are 713, 227. Our results are so close to the ones in the newspaper. Wow. All the students in the hall were in an uproar. The 3 assistant teachers on the podium were also stunned. This was because at this time, they also recalled the data in the newspaper. Lu Hongyuan's expression didn't change. He turned around, picked up a piece of chalk, and started calculating on the blackboard. When the students saw this, they hurriedly stopped their discussion and quietly watched Lu Hongyuan calculate. 710,226 is equal to 3.14159,292. When he reached the 7th decimal place, everyone's expressions became interesting. Lu Hongyuan, who had always been calm in the face of changes, was no exception. At this moment, the old teacher was so excited that he was trembling all over. He didn't even notice that the chalk in his hand had fallen to the ground. A miracle! I actually calculated the 6th decimal place of the ancestral rate. This. Chapter 896. The results of the Institute of Mathematics and Mathematics shocked the entire Imperial College. The professors, teaching assistants, and Confucian scholars who were unhappy with Li Zixuan and mocked Li Zixuan for getting such a result were all slapped in the face by the results of the Institute of Mathematics and Mathematics. Didn't you say that Li Zixuan was lucky to get the approximate value of the ancestral rate to 3 decimal places? Then Lu Hongyuan used the same method to get the ancestral rate to 6 decimal places. What should you say? This could completely prove that Li Zixuan's calculation of the ancestral rate of a needle experiment was reasonable. Those who understood the key points were all scared silly. One of the biggest problems in the history of mathematics, ancestral rate, was actually able to get the approximate value through a simple needle game. The circle-cutting technique was simply too weak in front of this. Perhaps if Zhu Chongji was alive, he would be shocked speechless for a long time after hearing such a seemingly absurd method of calculating ancestral rate. It was terrifying to think about. If even a needle could be used to calculate ancestral rate, then wouldn't it be true that Li Zixuan used a glass mirror to create a rainbow, double slit to create stripes, iron box to communicate, and water to create 2 gases? What kind of knowledge was engineering? How could it be so magical? At this moment, even the Confucian scholars who had been influenced by Confucianism for more than 10 years were a little shaken in their hearts. They felt that engineering seemed to be more advanced and useful than Confucianism. But they didn't dare and didn't want to say these thoughts out loud, because they were the disciples of Confucianism. They were also the defenders of Confucianism, and they were also the beneficiaries of Confucianism. But just because the Confucian scholars didn't dare to say it, it didn't mean that the other students didn't dare to say it. In the Institute of Mathematics and Mathematics, as soon as class ended, Lu Hongyuan and the 3 teaching assistants stepped out of the classroom, and the students in the classroom immediately went into an uproar. Too magical. This experiment is too magical. Even with the circle cutting technique, it is very difficult to accurately calculate the ancestral rate to 6 decimal places. But this simple needle experiment actually did it. Yes. At first, I thought that the results recorded on Tang daily were a coincidence. But not only did we do it, but the results we obtained were even more accurate. How is this a coincidence? This means that Marquis Yong's method can really be used to calculate the ancestral rate. This is unbelievable. The Marquis of Yong is truly a genius. I've also read his new mathematics textbook, and the content is amazing. Now, with this needle experiment, his achievements in mathematics are something that we can never hope to achieve in our lifetime. I really don't understand how the Marquis of Yong connected Zhu LV to the needle throwing experiment. The two are completely unrelated. That's true. I didn't even see a single circle from the beginning to the end of the experiment. I don't know how the ancestral rate could be obtained through this method. I don't get it. The other experiments recorded in the newspaper are also very interesting. The students of Yinhuang College are so lucky. I want to go to Yinhuang College to see what the globe in the newspaper looks like. I want to go to Brother Yanghe. This break coincides with Yinhuang College's weekend. How about we go together? Haha, let's go together. When the results of Lu Hongyuan's needle-throwing experiment were spread, it caused a huge commotion among the people. Li Zishuan's erudition and the magic of engineering once again refreshed people's understanding. Before Li Zishuan, who would have thought that a small game could solve one of the biggest problems in the history of mathematics? Who could create rainbows? Who could obtain 2 types of gases from water, one to burn iron wires and one to cause explosions? Li Zishuan, who had been quiet for more than half a month, once again created a big piece of news, pushing him, Yinhuang College, and engineering to the forefront of the storm once again. However, Li Zishuan had already expected this effect. The reason why he agreed to Ma Zhou's release of this news was because he wanted this effect. Confucianism had been developed for nearly 1,000 years and was deeply rooted in people's hearts. Wanting to shake its position was tantamount to a fool's dream. Li Zishuan also didn't want to shake the position of Confucianism in a short period of time. He wanted to let engineering appear in people's sight once in a while to make its presence known. As time passed, more and more people would naturally know about engineering. This was a process where dripping water could penetrate a stone. Li Zishuan wasn't very anxious. He was currently recruiting people for the Football Association. Until now, there were only 2 people in the Football Association, him and the bearded man. This wouldn't do. The Football Association was in charge of all the football competitions in Tang Dynasty and the rewards and punishment for players. In the future, it would be necessary to set up a Football Association branch in various places. The number of people needed was far from what he and the bearded man could handle. Moreover, the bearded man was only temporarily helping the Football Association. This old fellow would have to run away after a year. First of all, we need to recruit scholars. It doesn't matter if their articles are good or not, but they must be upright, hardworking, and not greedy. In the principal office, Li Zishuan found the bearded man and Ma Zhou and was explaining the Football Association's recruitment principles to them. Why did he call Ma Zhou over? The main reason was that Li Zishuan trusted Ma Zhou's ability to judge people. Previously, the scholars that were recruited by the editorial department of Tang Daily were all recruited by Ma Zhou. Moreover, until now, there hadn't been any major problems. Therefore, now that the Football Association was recruiting people, Li Zishuan asked Ma Zhou to help the bearded man check. Lord Marquis, I can understand the first part, but is there a need for you to not be greedy? After listening to Li Zixuan's request, Ma Zhou was somewhat speechless. Li Zixuan answered without thinking. Of course it's necessary. Brother Ma, you don't understand now, but in less than a year, you will understand why I have such a request. Now, very few people could see the huge market wealth behind football. Why was there endless corruption in football in modern society? Wasn't it because of the money that could be made from football? Ma Zhou could only nod and agree. Then he thought for a while and said, previously, when the editorial department was recruiting people, there was a group of good scholars that were not recruited because of the limited quota. Why don't I let them come over again to solve Marquis' urgent need? Li Zixuan nodded and said, sure, as long as they can pass Brother Ma's eyes, then recruit them. Otherwise, how inappropriate would it be to leave such a big football association to Mr. Zhang San? Being trusted by Li Zixuan so much, Ma Zhou suddenly felt a lot of pressure. He secretly thought to himself that he had to check again later. He couldn't let evil people sneak in and ruin Li Zixuan's big plans. The bearded man laughed and said, "Ha, thank you for your understanding, Yamacho. Brother Ma, get them to come over as soon as possible. I've been so busy these 2 days that I don't have time to drink with old Wang Ji." When Li Zixuan and Ma Zhou heard this, they immediately laughed. Speaking of which, when these two drunkards got together, it could be said that they had met a bosom friend. Chapter 897. Brother Ma, after you recruit them, you must immediately organize them to undergo training on the rules of football and select a group of people with excellent training results to be their coaches. Let's first set up the headquarters of the Football Association, and then find a way to set up the Football Association in the various states of the Tang Empire. In the office, Li Zixuan continued. Ma Zhou nodded and said, "Marquis, don't worry. I understand what you mean." After that, he suddenly thought of something and smiled. "All right, Marquis, after the content of your class yesterday was spread by Tang Daily, it caused a huge reaction in Chang'an City, especially your needle-throwing experiment. It is said that Dr. Liu from the Imperial College of Mathematics did it himself. He threw the needle 710 times and pressed the line 226 times. When the two are divided, it is equal to 3. 1% 1. 25, 92, 92. It is even more accurate than the result you got last time." Li Zixuan was a little surprised. Density rate. This Dr. Liu actually got the density rate. Back then, Buffon proposed the needle-throwing experiment, and the Italian mathematician Lazzarini coincidentally used the needle-throwing experiment to get the density rate. Now, he proposed the needle-throwing experiment, and Dr. Liu got the density rate. It had to be said that history was always surprisingly similar. There were many coincidences in the unseen world. Oh, then this Dr. Liu is really lucky. Li Zixuan sighed with a calm expression. Ma Zhou continued excitedly. "Marquis, after Dr. Liu's result was spread, the scholars among the people were more convinced by the other content in the newspaper. Now, the reputation of our Yanhuang College will be even more prosperous." After Ma Zhou finished speaking, the bearded man looked at Li Zixuan thoughtfully. No one knew what he was thinking. "Marquis." At this moment, there was a knock on the door and Pang Feiji's voice. Ma Zhou and the bearded man looked at each other and found an excuse to leave. They understood that Pang Feiji did not come in directly, but chose to knock on the door. It meant that he had something to talk to Li Zixuan alone. "Feiji, what's the matter?" After the bearded guest left with Ma Zhou, Pang Feiji walked in. Li Zixuan looked up at Brother Chicken and asked. Pang Feiji cupped his fists and said, "Marquis, I've received news that Feng Jidai was conferred the position of Vice Minister of Guards by His Majesty during the morning court meeting. He was also given a mansion. It seems like he's really going to stay in Chang and for a long time." Vice Captain of the Imperial Guard? Li Zixuan searched for relevant information in his mind and said softly, "It seems that he really is here to be a hostage." The guard office was one of the 9 temples. Northern Qi established the guard office, and the guard was renamed the Minister of the Guard Office or Minister of the Guard. Now that I'm in Chang, and how can I not take this opportunity to understand you better? Feng Jidai's eyes were deep as he muttered to himself. "Young master, we've arrived at the post house." After an unknown period of time, Amu knocked on the window of the car and shouted, I know." Feng Jidai put down the newspaper, lifted the curtain, and jumped off the carriage. "Amu, come with me." Unexpectedly, Feng Jidai was not in a hurry to enter the post house. Instead, he walked to a quiet bamboo forest and ordered. Amu hurriedly followed. "Young master, help me gather some information about the Marquis of Yong. As long as it's about him, I want it. The more detailed, the better." Feng Jidai ordered with his hands behind his back. Amu's expression changed slightly as he asked, "Young master, you're thinking of..." Feng Jidai turned his back to Amu and said, "You don't need to know what I'm thinking. Be careful when you're trying to gather information. This is Chang, and His Majesty has many spies. Don't let anyone find out. Don't look for Li Zishuan's people to gather information about him. That will easily expose you, understand?" Amu cupped his fists and said, "I understand. Don't worry, young master. I won't cause you any trouble." Chapter 898. The mansion that Li Er gave to Feng Jidai was located in Yongxing Square, which was in the east of the imperial city. Coincidentally, this mansion was right next to Wei Zheng's house. Feng Jidai could be considered to be Wei Zheng's neighbor. "Young master, old master has some old friends in Chang'an. When do you want to visit them?" Feng Jidai and the rest brought their luggage to the new mansion. After settling their luggage, Amu came over and asked. Feng Jidai thought for a while and said, "No need to go first. We need to be clear about our current status. Rashly making friends with the officials will only be disadvantageous to us. Furthermore, isn't there a ready-made one right next to this mansion? Amu, prepare the visiting card. We will visit Minister Wei in the afternoon." His current status was a hostage. As a hostage, if he frequently visited the officials, wouldn't he be looking for trouble? Furthermore, this would also expose his father's connections in Chang'an. If Li Er knew, wouldn't he be even more suspicious of his father? "Young master is wise. Young master, the royal prince is here. He is waiting for you in the main hall." This afternoon, Li Zishuan had just woken up from his afternoon nap when he heard Shi whispering to him. "Oh, I'll be right there." Li Zishuan shook his groggy head and replied. After a while, "Hee, Prince, you are here? How have you been?" Li Zishuan came to the main hall and saw Li Xiaogong drinking tea. He smiled and greeted him. Li Xiaogong put down his teacup and pointed at Li Zishuan. He said unhappily, "You brat, if this prince didn't take the initiative to look for you, you would have already forgotten about your current position, right? Since ancient times, there was probably only one official who was as lazy as Li Zishuan, to the point that his superior had to personally come and look for him. Hee, how could that be? Prince, you're wronging me. I just want you to rest in the mansion for a few more days. After all, you have been out at sea for almost half a year." Li Zishuan walked to the seat next to him and sat down, grinning as he passed the buck. When Li Zishuan proposed the establishment of the Department of Shipbuilding and appointed Li Xiaogong as the head of the department, he said that since Li Xiaogong had just returned from the sea, he would allow Li Xiaogong to rest for a month before starting the establishment of the Department of Shipbuilding. That was why Li Zishuan said that. Li Xiaogong stared at him and said, "Kid, don't push the blame onto this king. It's true that this king has been out at sea for months, but do you really want this king to rest at home for a month? I'm not that delicate." He really didn't know how to appreciate good intentions. Li Er really found a good employee, but you didn't even want to give him a break. Your Highness is wholeheartedly devoted to the country. You work hard day and night and do your best. This young one admires you. Li Zishuan said as he gave a flattering reply. Facing such a slippery kid, Li Xiaogong felt helpless. He sighed and said seriously, "The previous sea trade brought in a very rich income for the imperial court. His Majesty and the other officials in the imperial court are beginning to pay attention to the sea trade. Yesterday, the envoys from the Nanyang countries all left the capital. Before that, they all came to visit this king, hoping that this king can help them in the future sea trade." Saying this, Li Xiaogong paused. As if he knew what Li Zishuan was thinking, he chuckled and continued. Although this king is usually a bit greedy, this king will definitely not accept this kind of money. They're trying to bribe this prince to gain more benefits for themselves in the future sea trade. However, if they gain more benefits, then the imperial court will naturally gain less benefits. This prince will definitely not do something like sacrificing the country's interests to enrich themselves. Li Zishuan stood up and cupped his hands in praise. Your Highness is righteous. This young one admires you. Li Xiaogong laughed and scolded. Don't flatter me. This king is telling you this not to boast, but to remind you that as a person in this position, don't be greedy for money that you shouldn't be. Although the borders of the Tang Empire seem stable, there are actually turbulent undercurrents. Moreover, our internal affairs are not peaceful either. The imperial court can use the sea trade to save more money, and we will have more confidence in the war. Li Zishuan nodded and said, Your Highness, don't worry. This young one knows the importance. As the saying goes, every man is responsible for the rise and fall of the world. This young one hopes that the Tang Empire will always be prosperous. Every man is responsible for the rise and fall of the world. Hearing this, Li Xiaogong's eyes lit up. He praised, You're quite accomplished in the art of craftsmanship. A few days ago, the entire Chong and city was talking about your class. I didn't expect you to be so accomplished in the art of writing as well. This sentence is well said. I don't know how spiritual master Ling Su taught such a monster like you. That's right, Li Xiaogong could only think of the word monster to describe Li Zishuan. He was well-versed in both the pen and the sword, and was proficient in too many things. Your Highness, you flatter me. This young one's ambition is not in writing. Li Zishuan shook his head and said, Oh, why? Li Zishuan thought for a while and said in a deep voice, In this young one's opinion, writing can only be used to arm a person's thoughts, but not to strengthen a country. Engineering is enough. Li Xiaogong narrowed his eyes and smiled mysteriously. If those rotten scholars heard this, you will be in big trouble. All right, this topic is off topic. Now that the envoys of the various countries have left, we should start to establish the Department of Shipping. To be honest, it's fine if you want this king to lead troops to war, but to let this king manage a yamen is too difficult for this king. This Department of Shipping is now a blank piece of paper. Xiaoxian, you have many ideas. First, think of the regulations of the Department of Shipping, then write a copy for this king. If there are no problems, we will show it to His Majesty for a look. Strive to have the Department of Shipping open before the end of the year. Li Zishuan was helpless. He had not finished the matters of the Football Association, and now he was asked to establish the Department of Shipping. It was really one wave after another. However, this was something he had promised Lier before, and he could not go back on his word now. Yes, this young one will draft the regulations of the Department of Shipping as soon as possible. Your Highness, please wait for the good news. Although he was complaining in his heart, he still had to do what needed to be done. This king knows that you are unwilling, but you are being loyal to the country. In the future, this king will personally go to Guangdong. In comparison, the burden on you is still light. Li Xiaogong seemed to have seen through Li Zishuan's thoughts and could not help but laugh. Li Zishuan inexplicably shuddered. Li Xiaogong was right. He was only giving ideas in Chong, and it was far better than Li Xiaogong going to Guangdong for a long time on a business trip. To Li Zishuan, in this era where there were no trains or planes, he was not willing to go far even if he was beaten to death. Chapter 899. By the way, Xiaoxian, the football you've been working on seems to be quite interesting. I heard that His Majesty even came to Yanhuang College to play a game. If I didn't have to go south soon, I would probably form a team to play too. In the main hall of the Yunshan residence, after Li Xiaogong finished talking about business, he suddenly talked about the recent football. His face was full of regret. Obviously, he should have heard a lot about the 2 football games of the academy. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Since your Highness likes football, I'll give you 2. You can take them to the south to play. Besides, when everything is settled there, His Majesty will definitely summon you back. As a prince of the Tang Empire, Lier would not let Li Shaogong stay in the south for a long time. At most, he would be summoned back by Lier after the business of the shipping department in Guangdong port stabilized. This was something that everyone could see clearly. Then this prince will accept your kind intentions. You don't know that my subordinates have been drooling for this football for a long time. Li Shaogong laughed heartily. He had an expression of disrespect, which made Li Zishuan feel that he had been deceived. When Li Zishuan first started to make football, he just wanted to play with it for himself. He did not intend to mass-produce and sell it because there was no stable rubber supply at that time. The rubber in his hands was used up little by little. Later, after reaching a trade agreement with Zhenla and Piao, Li Zishuan had rubber supply. In addition, Li Zishuan also intended to promote football. Lier then established the Football Association and decided to mass-produce football and promote it to the whole Tang Empire. Therefore, football now was not as precious as it was in the beginning. Li Tai had already asked for football from him. Cheng Chumo, Li Chengxian, and Iron Egg also got football as they wished. They did not have to wait until the top 3 in the monthly exam to get football. Seeing Li Zishuan's gloomy face, Li Shaogong stood up and smiled. Okay, you should hurry up with the shipping department. I won't disturb you anymore. Hey, your residence is built well. When your construction team finishes, lend it to me for a few days. The residence is old and needs to be renovated. Li Zishuan was speechless. It was not like he had never been to the Duke's residence. It was magnificent inside. How did it look like it had been in disrepair? Li Shaogong obviously wanted to renovate his residence according to the architectural style of the Yinshan residence. He had to admit that in terms of personal enjoyment, he and Li Shaogong. Yes, the construction of the academy has basically been completed. If your highness needs manpower, you can choose from the construction team at any time. I'll give you a few sets of furniture furnishings. Since Li Zishuan wanted to give him a favor, then he would give him the full set. Li Zishuan had a good impression of Li Shaogong. Good. You're the right person. Li Shaogong laughed heartily and left with a gratified expression. At night, in the new residence of the Feng family, the study was brightly lit, indicating that the owner of the residence was still awake. Curve Yuan Plow, Immortal Drunken Wine, Soft Village, Tang Daily, Yanhuang College. Li Zishuan built such a huge foundation in Chang, and in less than a year. He is indeed different from ordinary people. Feng Zhidai muttered to himself in the study under the candlelight. There was a thick stack of documents on the table in front of him. It was the information about Li Zishuan that his guards had gathered. Lingnan was relatively uninformed. He had heard of Li Zishuan's name and had used Li Zishuan's items, such as Tang Daily and Immortal Drunken Wine. But after reading the information, he realized that Li Zishuan had done a lot of things in the past year. The more he read the information, the more shocked he was. The speed of Li Zishuan's rise was beyond the scope of ordinary people's understanding. Li Zishuan descended from the sky and wiped out the 7 cultivators of true virtue sect with his own strength. After turning to the next page and seeing the note on it, Feng Zhidai's eyes narrowed and his face turned solemn. He quickly read it carefully. The study was terrifyingly quiet. Only the sound of insects and the sound of Feng Zhidai turning the pages could be heard occasionally. After a quarter of an hour, Feng Zhidai put down the documents and raised his head. His eyes were deep and his face was very ugly. He muttered, "Immortal lamp, true chi iron ball? How is this possible? Amu, young master." Feng Zhidai was in a daze for a while. Then he called Amu and asked in a deep voice, "Do these immortal lamp and true chi iron ball really exist?" Amu bowed and replied, "Young master, these immortal lamps do exist." During the Mid-Autumn Festival, the Marquis of Yong and brought his wife and sat on the immortal lamp to tour around Chang'an City. Countless people saw it. As for the true chi iron ball, it was only passed down from the imperial court. As for whether it is real or not, this subordinate has no way of knowing. There really is a divine object that can take people to the sky. Feng Zhidai's face showed a trace of disbelief. Suddenly, He seemed to have thought of something and asked anxiously, "How many of these true Qi iron balls does Li Zixuan have?" Mu was stunned and then replied, "According to the Marquis of Yong, and there is only one true Qi iron ball. His master, spiritual master Ling Su, poured all his strength into it before he passed away." Feng Jidai's face turned ugly. Nonsense. This young master has never heard of true Qi that can be stored for a long time. Li Zixuan must be lying. Seeing that Feng Jidai didn't believe him, Mu added, "Young master, this subordinate heard that on the night the 7 cultivators sect was destroyed, many people saw flames soaring to the sky from the northeast of Chang'an City. There was also a loud sound of thunder. A few days later, some villagers went up the mountain to check and found that the entire mountain peak had turned into ashes. If the Marquis of Yong and didn't use the true Qi iron ball, this subordinate really can't think of any weapon that could have such terrifying power." Hearing this, Feng Jidai couldn't help but become absent-minded. Flames? Thunder? How could such a divine method be in the hands of a mortal? After a while, he came back to his senses and ordered, "Mu, find an opportunity to send a message to my father. Tell him not to move. He can't be defeated." After saying this, a trace of loneliness suddenly appeared on his face. "Young master, this? Why? No matter how powerful the Marquis of Yong he is only one person. The terrain of Lingnan is dangerous, and we have thousands of warriors. What is there to be afraid of?" Mu glared at him, somewhat unconvinced. Feng Jidai angrily said, "Shut up. Do as I say." Seeing that the usually gentle Feng Jidai was angry, Mu didn't dare to say anything else. He quickly cupped his fists and replied, "Yes, young master." Chapter 900. The reason why the imperial court isn't willing to easily send troops to Lingnan is because of the steep terrain and dense forests. As long as our men hide in the forest, they can rely on their familiarity with the terrain to make it impossible for others to find them. If the imperial court insists on sending troops to Lingnan, it will definitely consume a lot of money and soldiers. At that time, the northern Turks won't let go of the Great Tang. This is also the main reason why the imperial court has always ignored the conflicts between the various tribal chiefs of Lingnan. But now, the imperial court is in control of the immortal lamp, as well as weapons of mass destruction similar to the true Qi iron balls in Li Zixuan's hands. The imperial court can send an army to destroy any place in Lingnan from the air at any time. If we dare to make any moves, we will very likely become the next 7 cultivators of true virtue and be annihilated overnight. Thus, Lingnan can't be touched, and the imperial court can't be an enemy. Inform father to end the conflict with Prince Tan as soon as possible and stop testing the imperial court's patience. The Great Tang's current strength is not something a trifling Lingnan can provoke. In the study of the Feng residence, Feng Jidai was silent for a while before speaking. The Prince Tan he spoke of was a tribal chief in the western part of Guangdong during the Sui and Tang dynasties. He was active in the northwestern part of Gaozhou and the northeastern part of Huazhou. He was a tribal chief on the same level as Feng Ong in Gaoliang. In the first year of Jingguan, due to the issue of territory in the northern part of Gaozhou, the Lingnan tribal chief Feng Ong and Prince Tan repeatedly attacked each other and did not enter the imperial court for a long time. The various prefectures reported that Feng Ong was plotting rebellion dozens of times. Only then did Li Er become suspicious and decide to send troops. In the study, after hearing Feng Jidai's analysis, Mu's face was full of shock. The fate of the 7 cultivators sect was right before his eyes, so he had to believe that what Feng Jidai said was very likely to happen. At that time, the imperial court would send a group of divine soldiers to descend from the sky on the back of the celestial lamp and throw some of them down. Li Zixuan was able to destroy the 7 cultivators sect with 2 Grandmaster Realm experts by himself. If the imperial court's army could imitate Li Zixuan's method of attack, it would be too terrifying. Thinking of this, Mu's back couldn't help but be covered in a layer of cold sweat. Young master's foresight is truly admirable. Amu bowed and cupped his fists. Feng Jidai nodded. After a long while, he sighed softly and said, "Go." Based on the current strength of the imperial court, we are definitely not their match, so we cannot act rashly. Find a chance to pass the news to my father as soon as possible. The situation in Ling and must be stabilized as soon as possible. Yes. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In these 3 days, in addition to the increasingly heated discussion about Li Zixuan's engineering enlightenment class, the influence of football had further expanded and had begun to affect the states and counties near Chang'an. As of now, there were more than 100 teams registered with the FIFA, including 11 states and counties, including Chang. As the Tang daily gradually spread the news of football to remote areas, it was believed that more and more teams would come to sign up. Of course, how many teams would still exist after a year was another matter. After all, when the league ranking tournament was held in March next year, only 20 teams could enter League 1, 30 teams could enter League 2, and the rest could only be regarded as amateur teams. They would face the situation of no prize money and no sponsorship. It was worth mentioning that Chang Chumo also formed a team, but his team was mostly playful because the players were all second-generation Chang, and rich second-generation like Yuchi Baolin, Wang Ming, Sun Zifan, Zhang Sun Chong, and even Li Tai. In fact, Li Tai himself also wanted to select a group of guards to form a professional football team, but his identity was too special. If he formed a team and no one dared to play against him, then it would be bad. Therefore, he and Li Chengxian consciously did not form their own team, but only played in Cheng Chumo's team occasionally. On this day, Li Zixuan was working in the office of the academy. Previously, Li Xiaogong had asked him to draft the structure and management regulations of the Department of Shipping, and now it was basically in the final stage. It was strange to say that this guy's work efficiency was highest only in the academy, and he was too lazy to move at home. This was one of the reasons why he always liked to work in the principal's office in Guanghua Building. As for the Department of Shipping, its function was somewhat similar to the modern customs. Therefore, Li Zixuan divided the Department of Shipping into 4 departments according to the structure of the customs and the current situation of the Tang Empire: the General Department, the Inspection Department, the Tax Department, and the Inspection Department. The General Department was jointly led by the left and right secretaries of the General Department. The Inspection Department had a general supervisor and 2 deputy supervisors, who were mainly responsible for investigating the smuggling of goods or goods that were prohibited by sea. For example, the Tang Empire's curved plows, cement, celestial lamps, weapons, and other things that contained a certain amount of technical content and were extremely beneficial to the people or the army. These goods were definitely not to be sold to other countries. The Tax Department had a general supervisor and 2 deputy supervisors, who were mainly responsible for collecting taxes on sea trade goods. Of course, these goods included both imported and exported goods. As for the tax rate, it was different for different goods, but overall the difference was not too big. Excluding the tax, the merchants were still very profitable. As for the Inspection Department, it was mainly responsible for supervising the daily behavior of all the officials in the Department of Shipping and whether they were honest or not. It was directly responsible to the left and right secretaries of the Department of Shipping, which was a bit similar to the modern Commission for Discipline Inspection. In addition to building the framework of the Department of Shipping, Li Zixuan also sorted out some details, such as the list of prohibited goods, the import and export tax rate of various goods, and so on. He wrote down a voluminous 70 to 80,000 words, which was enough to fill a short story. "Yamacho, Mr. Su is looking for you." At this moment, Emo Zhong pushed the door open and came in. Mr. Su reported, and then he hesitated to speak. "What's the matter?" Li Zixuan asked casually, and then put down the pencil, tidied up the regulations of the Department of Shipping he had just finished, and put it in a file bag made of craft paper. His current office was becoming more and more like a modern office, and basically had everything. Yamacho, Mr. Su also brought Dr. Liu from the Imperial College of Mathematics. "What do you think?" Emo Zhong said in a low voice. Having been in the academy for so long, he knew that Lisa Xuan and the Imperial College had a bit of enmity, so he was not sure whether to let Su Hongji and Dr. Liu in. Lisa Xuan was startled, and then he laughed and scolded. When did you learn to be tactful? Quickly invite the two gentlemen in. Chapter 901. Lisa Xuan didn't have any grudges against the Imperial College. At most, some people in the Imperial College didn't like him. He didn't take these things to heart. Back then, when he had angrily resigned, it had not been to deliberately target Kong Yingda. On the contrary, when he had been teaching at the Imperial College, Kong Yingda had taken good care of him. In the end, he had just been a little dissatisfied with the Imperial College, where Confucianism was prevalent. Besides, it had been so long. He only wanted to do well at Yanwang College. How could he have the time to care about these small grudges? Ah, Mr. Su, Mr. Liu, come in and have a seat. Mo Zhong served the tea. Mo Zhong welcomed Su Hongji and Liu Honyuan in. Lisa Xuan hurriedly stood up and greeted them warmly. Su Hongji cupped his hands and said sincerely, Yamacho, this is my teacher. He has something to ask you. I hope you won't mind. Hey, Mr. Su, you're too serious. This is the first time I've met Dr. Liu. There's no such thing as past grudges. Come in and have a seat. Dr. Liu, please. Lisa Xuan interrupted Su Hongji without waiting for him to finish. Liu Honyuan looked at Lisa Xuan appreciatively and followed Lisa Xuan inside. He smiled and said, Marquis Yong is so young, but you have such a big heart. No wonder you can build up such a big business in just a few months. They sat down one after another. Lisa Xuan smiled and said, Dr. Liu, you're too kind. You've been working hard at the Imperial College for decades, teaching and educating people. You're the role model of my generation. Lisa Xuan knew that Liu Honyuan was Su Hongji's teacher. He also investigated Liu Hongyuan's past deeds. He was a respectable teacher of the people. Seeing Lisa Xuan's kind face without any displeasure, Su Hongji, who was still worried, was relieved. Liu Honyuan said, Haha, forget it. That's all in the past. Don't mention it again. Today, this old man has come to find the Marquis of Yong, and because I have a request. The old man had been teaching for his entire life, but he did not put on any airs at all. His attitude was also quite humble. He was completely different from those rotten scholars. Lisa Xuan admired him in his heart, but he quickly said, Old mister, you're too kind. If you have something to ask, just say it. There's no need to talk about asking for it. Isn't this too much for this junior? When Liu Honyuan heard Lisa Xuan's reply, he didn't bother to be courteous. His pale old face was now flushed red. He was probably very excited at this moment. A few days ago, I saw the needle toss game that Marquis Yong had made. Out of curiosity, I also made a similar game at the School of Mathematics. I'm sure Marquis Yong and has already heard the results. To be able to accurately calculate the 6th decimal point of the ancestral rate in my lifetime, this old man is naturally excited, but speaking of this, the old man paused for a moment. Lisa Xuan cooperated and asked, But what? Professor Liu, there's no harm in saying it directly. Liu Honyuan nodded and continued, But no matter how much I thought about it, I still couldn't figure out how to calculate the ancestral rate through a simple needle toss game. This seems like child's play. This old man thought about it for 4 whole days and still couldn't figure it out. Thus, I shamelessly came here to ask Marquis Yong for advice. I hope you don't blame this old man for coming uninvited. So, it was for the needle toss experiment. After hearing this, Lisa Xuan finally understood why the old man came. However, he couldn't help but feel that it was a little funny. To be troubled over a question for 4 whole days, this was really a stubborn old man. Actually, regarding the theory behind the needle toss experiment, many teachers from Yanwang College, including Su Hongji, had come to ask him. However, he didn't say anything. He wanted to let the teachers from the college slowly find the answer themselves. Now that the old man came all the way here just for this, Lisa Xuan couldn't continue to keep him in suspense. Since Professor Liu wants to know the theory behind this game, then this junior will explain it today. If there are any mistakes, I hope the two of you can point them out. Lisa Xuan said politely. Then He took out a pencil from the pencil box on his desk and a piece of white paper. He began to explain as he drew. Let's assume that there is an iron wire bent into a circle. Its diameter is exactly the distance between the parallel lines that I drew on the paper when I was doing the needle toss game. We will use d to represent this distance. It can be imagined that for such a circle, no matter how it is thrown, there will be 2 points of intersection with the parallel lines. Thus, if the circle is thrown in times, then the total number of intersection points must be 2 in. Cough, cough. The people of Tang Dynasty didn't understand English, let alone the pronunciation of the English alphabet. Thus, when Li Zishuan set the unknown variables, he used Hanyu Pinyin to read it so that others wouldn't understand. To make it easier to read, there will be no additional labels for the letters. Lu Hanyuan and Su Hongji both nodded thoughtfully. Both of them had learned Li Zishuan's new mathematics and had read about equations in the textbooks, so they could understand Li Zishuan's method of setting the unknown variables. Li Zishuan continued. Let's now imagine that the circle is straightened, then the length of the iron wire is pi d. Oh, right. I usually like to use pi to represent the ancestral rate. After the circle was straightened, the situation of such an iron wire intersecting with parallel lines when it was thrown down was obviously more complicated than that of a circle. There might be 4 points of intersection, 3 points of intersection, 2 points of intersection, 1 point of intersection, or even no intersection at all. Since the length of a circle and a straight line are both pi d, according to the principle of equal opportunity, when they are thrown a large number of times and are equal, the total number of intersection points between the two in a set of parallel lines is approximately the same. That is to say, when a wire of length pi d is thrown n times, the total number of intersection points between the wire and a set of parallel lines should be approximately 2n. Now let's talk about the case of the iron wire length L. When the number of throws n increases, the total number of intersection points of the iron wire with the parallel lines, m, should be proportional to the length L. Thus, m equals kl, where k is the coefficient of proportionality. In order to find k, we only need to note that for the special case of L equals pi d, we have m equals 2n. Thus, we get k equals 2n pi d. Substituting the former formula, we get m is almost equal to 2ln pi d, and thus pi is almost equal to 2ln dm. When the length of the line is half the distance between the parallel lines, the above formula can be written as pi is almost equal to m. These are the 2 needle throwing games we did before. There were some beyond the scope of the knowledge, so Li Zishuan forgot to explain. He didn't care whether they could understand or not. He just said it all. Sure enough, Lu Hanyuan and Su Hongji both frowned. The two silently digested the information. After a while, Lu Hanyuan asked, I have something I don't understand. What is the principle of equal opportunity? Chapter 902. In the office. When Li Zishuan heard Lu Hanyuan ask about the principle of equal opportunity, he couldn't help but rub his eyebrows. This problem was too complicated to explain. After thinking for a long time, he still didn't know where to start. So he could only say, Dr. Lu, this so-called equal opportunity, I can't explain it to you at the moment. In the future, another field of mathematics will be derived, called probability theory and mathematical statistics. After you finish reading that book, you will roughly understand what equal opportunity is. In addition, when mathematics is developed to a higher level, the same result can be derived through pure mathematics. That method is more complicated, so I won't take it out. In fact, the Buffon needle throwing problem could be completely proved using pure mathematics. 2 mathematical abstractions were used in the middle. First, let the needle rotate around a point on the basic unit segment. Through definite integration, the ratio of the 2 areas was obtained. Then, let the needle translate on the basic unit segment. Using definite integration, the ratio of the 2 volumes was obtained. Finally, the relationship between the probability of the fine needle pressing the line and pi was obtained. However, this process required knowledge of trigonometric functions and calculus, so it would be more troublesome to explain. But then again, when a person reached a high level in mathematics, they wouldn't use such a stupid method like the needle-throwing experiment to find pi, because trigonometric functions and infinite series methods could be used to obtain a more accurate pi. According to records in 1706, the British mathematician Melchin used the formula pi equals 16 arctan, 15, 4 arctan, 1239, to calculate the value of pi, which broke through the 100-digit decimal mark. The value of arctanks could be calculated through the Taylor series. At this time, Lu Hanyuan couldn't help but be shocked. Listening to Li Zixuan's words, the new mathematics that everyone thought was very advanced was only in the beginning stage. In the future, there would be a whole set of advanced theories, and other knowledge would be derived. How old is Li Zixuan this year? How can there be such a terrifying amount of knowledge in his brain? Is he going to establish his own school of mathematics and become a founding figure in the field of mathematics? At this moment, Lu Hanyuan didn't care about the equal opportunity principle anymore. His heart was only filled with horror. He looked at Li Zixuan as if he was looking at a monster. Gulp! Su Hongji was stunned for a while and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. When he first met Li Zixuan, when he was checking the accounts of the shop, he wanted to give Li Zixuan some pointers. Only today did he realize that he was not on the same level as Li Zixuan. The difference between them could be described as heaven and earth. Yamacho, have you mastered the advanced level of mathematics? Su Hongji came back to his senses and asked tentatively. Li Zixuan tilted his head and thought for a moment, then said 70 to 80%. Back then, I wasn't interested in learning mathematics, so I only learned about 70 to 80% of it. What he said was the truth. When he was in high school and university, his math grades were not outstanding. At most, he was considered excellent. He could not be compared to those straight-A students who could get full marks every time. However, in this life, his spiritual power was so strong that if he was given another chance, he would definitely be able to compete with the top students in his class. Su Hongji and Lu Hanyuan nearly vomited blood. Firstly, they were depressed. Depressed that Li Zixuan had only learned 70 to 80%, yet he was still able to hang and beat the two of them. Secondly, they were angry. Angry that Li Zixuan had the conditions to learn such knowledge, yet he didn't study it properly. What a waste. Then, with Du Qiong's current proficiency in mathematics, can you calculate the ancestral rate to more than 7 decimal places? After struggling for a long time, Lu Hanyuan asked this question. He mainly wanted to see if advanced mathematics was really as powerful as Li Zixuan said. He didn't want to make things difficult for him. Li Zixuan laughed in his heart. Now he could act tough again. In his previous life, he had especially memorized this thing to act tough. But until his accidental death, no one had given him a chance to act tough. Now, old Lu was simply here to deliver a pillow to him. Of course. In my spare time, I've calculated a few times. Now, I'll share it with the two of you. Please listen carefully. Li Zixuan chuckled and stood up with his hands clasped behind his back. Then he began to act tough. 3 points, 4 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 points. 4 points, 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 4 points. Lu Hanyuan was just casually probing, but once Li Zixuan opened his mouth, he couldn't stop. In the blink of an eye, Li Zixuan had memorized 8 decimal places, 9 decimal places, 10 decimal places. This had already exceeded the accuracy of Zhu Chongji's Zhu rate, but Li Zixuan still didn't stop. 37510, 5829, 74944. As they listened, Lu Honyuan and Su Hongji felt that something was wrong. Although Li Zixuan spoke very quickly, they could tell that Li Zixuan seemed to be reciting according to some kind of rhythm. That's right, rhythm. The two of them couldn't help but look at each other. They suspected that Li Zixuan was just randomly reciting. 3, 4, 8, 2, 5, 3, 4, 2, 1, 7, 6, 7, 9. Phew. All right, this junior will only remember the first 100 names for now. You two gentlemen can record them down for future verification. There is absolutely no mistake in the first 100 names. I, Li Zixuan, guarantee with my own integrity. After reciting for a while, Li Zixuan finally stopped. He let out a sigh and said to the two people in front of him, the reason why he could memorize the first 100 digits of pi in his previous life was mainly because he used an opportunistic method. First, imagine a drunkard drinking in a mountain temple and dying in a ravine, a pot of wine in a temple on the peak. 3, 14159, 26. 3 pots of wine are not enough for me. 535897. Wine kill, 932. Unkillable, 384. Lalulu, 626. It's fine if you die, 43383. Heirs abandoned ravine, 279. Then, imagine the mood of the deceased's father after learning that his son had died, I love my son, 502. It's sad enough to die in vain, 8841971. Leaving him to the ravine, 69,399. Then imagine the scene of the deceased's father going to the ravine to look for his son. My back hurts when the mountain turns, 37510. I'm afraid you'll be frozen for a long time, 58209. Long sad CC, 74,944. Then, the scene of the father finding his son in the ravine and saving him, and the son realizing his mistake and turning back. I save my son, 592. The cave turns, 307. It's not good to stay, 816. The four neighbors are happy, 406. Heir's not happy, 286. Heir dotes on father for a long time, 20,899. Father Lu doesn't understand, 86,280. Think thrice, 348. Sun Wu, 25. Think thrice and be reluctant, 34211. Wife waits for a long time, 70,679. Just like that, wouldn't the first 100 digits of pi be easy to memorize? I'm just asking you guys if you're 6 or not. Su Hongji and Lu Honyuan didn't know if they should slip away or not, but when they heard Li Zixuan make such a solemn guarantee, their faces became solemn. This was because Li Zixuan had never used his personality to guarantee anything. This was basically equivalent to swearing to the heavens. Ancient people didn't know the saying, I use my personality to guarantee. Then, the solemn expression on their faces turned into horror. If what Li Zixuan said was true, it would be too scary. The ancestral rate was 100 digits after the decimal point. This Li Zixuan was going to break through the heavens of the mathematics world. Seeing the shock on their faces, Li Zixuan couldn't help but feel a little proud. He finally had a chance to show off. However, Su Hongji's next sentence caused his face to darken. Ahem, Yamacho. Can you say it again? We can write it down. Chapter 903. After sending Lu Honyuan and Su Hongji off, Li Zixuan packed up his things and went home. Li Zixuan made a copy of pi and gave it to Su Hongji. Although no one could verify the accuracy of pi except him, Li Zixuan believed that there would be students in Yanhuang College who could calculate pi to so many digits in less than 5 years. He had just told Lu Honyuan the same thing. The old man was very excited and said that he hoped that he could live until that day. Li Zixuan was silent after hearing this. He wanted to invite Lu Honyuan to Yanhuang College, but now he only hoped that Lu Honyuan could retire from the School of Mathematics as soon as possible so that he could go home and enjoy his old age. The old man should teach and educate people all his life. He should have a happy old age. Young master. Oh, Uncle Wang, you're here. Li Zixuan saw Wang Zhong when he got home. He quickly walked over and greeted him with a smile. They sat down. Wang Zhong knew that Li Zishuan didn't like to beat around the bush, so he said directly, "Young master, you asked me to buy grain and build a granary. With the help of the college's engineering team, the granary has been mostly repaired. It's at the foot of Yunshan Mountain. The granary door is locked with a special lock made by Mr. Mo. This is the key. Please keep it well." Then he handed over a key. Li Zishuan took it and smiled gently. "Haha, Uncle Wang, thank you for your hard work." "Not at all, not at all," Wang Zhong replied and said, "Young master, with the help of the Chamber of Commerce, we have bought nearly 400,000 dawn of grain. The granary is full, and this amount is more than enough. We can't buy any more. Besides, it's said that the imperial court has started to buy the surplus grain on the market. They bought more than we did. Because of this, the price of grain, which had dropped to 2 coins a bushel, is now going to rise again. If we buy more, I'm afraid that it will cause the price of grain in Chang and to skyrocket. It'll be bad if the emperor blames us." 400,000 dawn? Hearing this number, Li Zishuan couldn't help but be shocked. It was true that he had asked Wang Zhong to buy a large amount of food, but he didn't expect Wang Zhong to be able to buy so much food. This was a bit beyond his expectations. It was mainly because he underestimated the ability of the members of the Flaming Yellow Chamber of Commerce. "Uncle Wang, give a batch of grain to the winery to make wine. First, increase the production of Drunken Immortal, and second, let them produce a batch of alcohol reserves. We will need it in the near future." After thinking, Li Zishuan gave his order. Logically speaking, 400,000 dan of grain was truly too much. Even if the great Tang had been caught off guard by the plague of locusts, this amount of grain would have been enough to last 100,000 people for several months. Moreover, the great Tang had long since made preparations. Not only were the people raising chickens in large numbers, the imperial court had also stockpiled several million dan of grain. Li Zishuan felt that his family really did have a bit too much grain. It was better to use it to make wine. Based on the current financial situation of the imperial court, after the locust plague next year, Li Er might launch an attack on the Turkic Khaganate ahead of time. There would be many casualties in the war between countries. If he stored more alcohol, he could ensure that more of the injured would not die from infection. Hearing Li Zishuan's words, Wang Zhong's face turned red. He realized that he had accidentally bought too much grain. He quickly nodded and said, "Yes, young master. This old man will arrange it right away." The next day, when it was almost noon, Li Zishuan brought him to the Hejian County King's manor to look for Li Shaogong. What surprised him was that the County King's mansion had already begun the renovation of the old house. The houses on the left side of the prince's mansion had all been demolished. Some workers were digging the foundation. Li Zishuan had seen many of these workers before. Well, they were all from the academy's construction team. From the looks of it, Li Shaogong wanted to imitate the style of the Cloud Mountain courtyard and build a similar courtyard in his prince's mansion. This was because he had already asked Li Zishuan for the Cloud Mountain courtyard's blueprints and a lot of cement. This old man really did not know how to make himself suffer. Once he had something good, he would immediately bring it to his house. "Your Highness, about the regulations of the shipping department, I have already drafted them. Would you like to take a look?" The butler brought Li Shaogong to the back room. Li Shaogong was drinking tea in the room. It seemed that he had just finished the morning assembly and had not even taken off his court robes. "Hey, you brat, if I had known that you were done, I would have brought you to the morning assembly. Now I have to make another trip. Someone, prepare the carriage," Li Shaogong said helplessly as he beat his legs. The servant beside him quickly agreed and then went to prepare a horse for Li Shaogong. Li Zishuan was stunned and asked, "Your Highness, don't you want to take a look first?" Li Shaogong waved his hand and said, "No need. What is there for me to be worried about? At most, I will take a look from the carriage." He had always been self-aware. He knew that in terms of overall planning, Li Zishuan's ideas were definitely better than his. Yanwang College was a good example. He had never casually interfered in areas that he was not good at. Just like when he brought Li Jing to destroy Shaoxian, he had never interfered in the military deployment and command. He had left it all to Li Jing. You could say that he was leeching, but since ancient times, There had been many superiors who liked to give orders to their subordinates in areas that they were not good at. In the end, it led to the situation becoming worse and worse. Sometimes, leeching was also an advantage. The two of them arrived at the palace in a carriage. After reporting, they were brought to Gamlu Hall. Lier was there working hard to read the memorials. Your Majesty, Li Zexuan has already drafted the regulations for the Department of Shipping. Please take a look. After greeting each other, Li Xiaogong stepped forward and cupped his hands. This was his second advantage. He had never fought with his subordinates for credit, unlike some leaders in modern times. They were clearly not the ones who did it, but they insisted on putting gold on their faces. Oh, so fast. Zhao Song quickly presented. Li Er's expression lit up as he hurriedly said. Zhao Song took the thick stack of documents from Li Xiaogong and handed it to Li Er. Li Er opened it and saw that it was organized and structured. It looked very comfortable. He could not help but secretly praise Li Zexuan. Once he was serious about something, there was nothing to say. Putting away these complicated thoughts, Li Er calmed down and began to study seriously. As the ruler of a country, he could not think of things as simply as Li Xiaogong. He had to think of a comprehensive plan. After about half an hour, Li Zexuan's legs were a little sore from standing. Li Er finally raised his head and said, "Not bad, not bad. This regulation is well written. Especially this Department of Inspection, it is very necessary. But why are there curved plows and cement in the list of prohibited goods?" Li Zexuan stepped forward and explained, "Your Majesty, what I am thinking is that in the future, all the advanced farming tools and tools of Tang Empire must be prohibited from being exported to the outside world. We must sell flashy things like color glass and divine mirror. Only in this way can Tang Empire always remain advanced and strong. Otherwise, once the technology is leaked, we may nurture an opponent that can threaten us." Chapter 904. Li Zexuan was instilling the concept of technology protection into Li Er. There was no other way around it. The ancient people were deeply influenced by Confucianism and were extremely generous to the people of other countries. They couldn't wait to share the best things in their country with others. This could be seen from the generous gifts that neighboring countries gave to the great Tang Dynasty. More importantly, with the development of Yanhuang College in the future, there would be more and more academic results. Academic results could be transformed into advanced industrial technology. At that time, there would be an endless stream of high-tech products that involved agriculture, the military, and daily life. If these products were to fall into the hands of other countries, not only would there be the risk of imitation, there would also be technology leakage. In Li Zexuan's view, it wasn't that all industrial products were prohibited from being sold. It was those low-tech and easily imitated industrial products that had to be banned. For example, the moment things like the curved plow and compass were leaked, it wouldn't take long for them to be imitated. By the time Great Tang developed a more technologically advanced replacement, they could sell the products that were previously eliminated to maintain their leading position. For example, they could create a tractor in the future to replace the curved plow and sell the surplus curved plow in the country. If there was a better replacement in the future, they could also sell the tractor because it wouldn't be easy for others to imitate it. What kind of person was Li Zexuan? He instantly understood what Li Zexuan meant. After pondering for a moment, he said, "What you said makes sense. We can sell ordinary products, but we can't sell anything that harms the interests of Great Tang. This constitution isn't bad. We'll follow the constitution of the Bureau of Shipping." After which, he looked at Li Xiaogong and instructed, "Xiaogong, you should quickly establish the Bureau of Shipping. You can choose the officials from the hundreds of officials in the imperial court. After that, you will bring them south to Lingnan and set up the Bureau of Shipping in Guangzhou. You will set up branch offices in Cheongzhou, Chaozhou, Chuanzhou, and Fuzhou. You will open these 5 ports to the public. In the future, the goods traded by the various countries in Nanyang will have to pass through these 5 ports. Otherwise, it will be considered smuggling. All smugglers, regardless of their identity, will be severely punished. When the time comes, the local officials will cooperate with you. Furthermore, I will instruct Feng Ong and Tan Dian to not cause you any trouble." In the second month of the first year of Zhengguan, Li Er issued an imperial decree that the country was divided into 10 provinces and counties, namely Guanyi Dao, Hunan Dao, Hedong Dao, Hebei Dao, Shannon Dao, Longyu Dao, Huainan Dao, Jiangnan Dao, Jiannan Dao, and Lingnan Dao. The counties were abolished and replaced with provinces. Guangdong was part of the Lingnan circuit. Li Shaogong cupped his fists and said solemnly, "This subject obeys the decree." Li Erzwang seemed to be a little worried and said, "Lingnan is not like other places. The situation is extremely complicated. I allow you to bring 3,000 elites. In an emergency, you have a right to act first and report later. You must ensure the normal operation of the Department of Shipping. At the same time, you must maintain the stability of Lingnan." The last sentence had a deeper meaning. Li Shaogong and Li Zixuan both narrowed their eyes at the same time. They secretly thought that even though Feng Ong had sent his son to Chang, and as a hostage, Li Er still did not let down his guard against Lingnan. "Yes, Your Majesty. Don't worry, Your Majesty. As long as this subject is in Lingnan, the Department of Shipping will definitely operate as usual. Lingnan will definitely not fall into chaos." Li Shaogong cupped his fists and said solemnly, I believe you. All right, you can go back to your work." Li Erzwang nodded and waved his hand. Only then did the two of them take their leave. "Your Highness, what kind of person is Feng Ong?" Leaving the palace, Li Zixuan asked Li Shaogong as they sat on the "Don't Touch Me" of the royal prince's mansion. Li Shaogong frowned and thought for a while before answering. "Feng Ong. He is a capable and ambitious person." Without waiting for Li Zixuan to ask, Li Shaogong continued. In the previous dynasty, Feng Ong started as a small county magistrate and went all the way to the right Wu-Wei Grand General. Although he had the support of his ancestors, his ability to lead troops and fight wars was unquestionable. After the previous dynasty was destroyed, Feng Ong led the army back to Lingnan. In just a few years, he unified hundreds of tribes and occupied thousands of li. His ability is naturally evident. Then why does Your Highness say that he is an ambitious person? Li Zixuan asked. Hearing this, Li Shaogong's face turned cold. He said, "In the first year of Wuda, the Tang Empire was founded. Emperor Gaozu and the current His Majesty conquered the east and the west, gradually purging the rebellious forces in the Tang Empire. Of course, there were also many forces that chose to submit to the Tang Empire. But Feng Ong did not. It was not until the 5th year of Wuda that the Tang Empire and the Eastern Turks fought a war. The Turks retreated, and the situation in the Tang Empire became clear. Only then did Feng Ong offer up his territory and submit to the imperial court. If he is not ambitious, then what is?" In 617 AD, Li Yuan raised his army in Taiyuan. Like many other warlords, he chose to ally with the Turks. A year later, Li Yuan ascended the throne in Chang and founded the country as Tang. The Tang Empire regime quickly stood out among the warlords. Their conflict with the Turks deepened day by day, and they began to turn from allies to enemies. In the 5th year of Wuda, a famine broke out in the Turks. At that time, Li Yuan wanted to free himself to deal with his most powerful opponent, Liu Haida, so he took the initiative to send large amounts of gold, silver, and treasures to Sheli Khan, requesting peace. Sheli Khan was in a difficult situation because of the famine, but he was happy to push the boat along with the current. The two countries promised to marry and mend their relationship. Li Yuan took advantage of the temporary peace with the Turks to launch an all-out attack on his opponent, Liu Haida. On the 26th day of the 3rd month, Li Shimin defeated Liu Haida. Liu Haida's 20,000 elite troops were almost wiped out. He only took 200 or so people to escape and seek refuge with the Turks. Sheli Khan seemed to have woken up from a dream. He tore apart the peace treaty with the Tang Empire and sent out tens of thousands of troops. Together with the exiled Liu Haida, he launched an attack on the Tang Empire. Li Yuan urgently ordered Crown Prince Li Jiansheng to go out of Zhuozhou. Qin Wang Li Shimin went out of Qinzhou to resist the two Turks' armies. In addition, he dispatched Yunzhou Zhongwang Guizai to Yunzhong to ambush Shelley Khan's main forces. Zuwei, General Duan Detzao, went to Xiazhou to cut off the Turks' retreat route. Both sides fought and suffered casualties. However, because at that time the Tang Empire had not completely unified China, Li Yuan tried his best to avoid large-scale conflict with the Turks, so much so that he did not hesitate to sacrifice part of his interests to restrain Shelley Khan. Finally, the Turks withdrew their troops, giving the Tang Empire a very precious opportunity to breathe. It was also in this year that Lingnan chief Feng Ong entered the imperial court and expressed his willingness to submit to the Tang Empire. Li Yuan divided his original territory into Gao, Luo, Chun, Bai, Ye, Zhai, Lin, and Zhun, 8 prefectures. He appointed Feng Ong as Shangzhugua, Gaozhou Zhongguan, and conferred him the title of Duke of Yu. He appointed his son Feng Zhidai as the governor of Chunzhou. Inside the carriage, Li Zishuan was silent for half a day. Then he cupped his fists and said, "If it is really as Wang Ye said, then Wang Ye must be careful in everything in Lingnan." Li Shaogong laughed heartily and said, "Ha, don't worry. Feng Ong, won't dare to touch this prince. If he does, then the imperial court will have a reason to send troops to Lingnan." At the end of his words, a cold light appeared in his eyes. Chapter 905. Li Zishuan would not be able to help with this. The next step was for Li Shaogong to select suitable officials to fill up this newly established department. Although he knew most of the big shots in the imperial court, it was useless if he was not familiar with them. As the saying goes, you may know a person for a long time without understanding his true nature. This kind of thing had to be left to Li Shaogong, the old fox in the imperial court. He still had a lot of things to do. On the FIFA side, Ma Zhou was also very efficient. Now, the team of the FIFA headquarters had been set up. More than 30 young scholars had just joined and were learning the football management regulations written by Li Zishuan under Ma Zhou's organization. They would be assessed in a week. Li Zishuan planned to wait until this group of people had finished their training before selecting some of them to set up local FIFA branches. The great Tang had 10 daos, and he was only planning to set up a FIFA branch in each one, not every province. After all, the great Tang had more than 300 provinces. How could he find so many people? In addition, because of Li Zishuan's wonderful engineering enlightenment class, Yanhuang College had become famous. Every weekend, students from other places would come to visit. Li Zishuan did not refuse any of them. The 2 places that most students visited were Guanghua Building and Sports Field. There was a huge globe downstairs in Guanghua Building. On it, the location of each province and county of the Tang Empire was marked in detail. The other countries were not marked in detail, but from this globe, it could be seen that the Tang Empire's territory was very small compared to the whole world. This surprised many people. Before Li Zishuan, everyone thought that the Tang Empire was the center of the world. But the reality was not like that. Of course, there were people who doubted the authenticity of the globe. But when there were doubts, there would be Yanhuang College students next to them who would take out the college's geography textbook and debate with them. After a period of time, many people accepted Li Zishuan's Earth theory. The sports department of the academy already had a batch of soccer balls for the academy students to rent for free. Therefore, there were several soccer teams formed by the students in the academy. However, there was only one field, and Li Tai and the other rich second generations could not occupy it every day. In the end, the soccer teams discussed with each other and decided that they could use whatever field they wanted on weekdays, but on weekends, they had to take turns. Therefore, there were football matches on the sports field every weekend. Most of the students who came to visit Yanhuang College liked to come here to watch the fun. Correspondingly, more and more people began to feel the charm of football. Most of these people wanted to buy a football when they went back, but when they saw the high price and the long line outside the strange interest pavilion every day, they dismissed the idea. "Since I can't afford it, I'll rent it." Although it cost 100 copper coins to rent a soccer ball for a day, it was still acceptable for several people to share the cost of a dozen copper coins. Therefore, the football rental business of the Football Association became popular. The more than 300 soccer balls in the warehouse could be rented out every day, and they could earn dozens of copper coins in a day. Although this was a small amount of money to Lisa Schwann, this small amount of money was more than the monthly profit of some restaurants and shops. It really made many people envious. Phew! The matters of the Academy, the Department of Municipal Imports, and the Football Association have finally come to an end. I can finally do my own things. Lisa Schwann sighed and sighed as he walked on the path of Yinshan. During this period, he was very busy for Yanhuan College, the Department of Municipal Imports, and the Football Association of Tang Empire. Now that these three departments were on the right track, he could free up his hands to do some interesting things. For example, supplying electricity to the Yinshan villa. This was something he had wanted to do for a long time. He was tired of the dim candlelight. He wanted to bring light to the dark night of the world. Ahem, he digressed. He just wanted to use a light bulb in his house. It was such a simple request, but there were many difficulties in it. However, Lisa Schwann was not afraid of difficulties. After all, now that he had rubber, he could use rubber-coated copper wire as an electric wire. It was more stable than the previous enameled wire. In this way, the medium and long-distance power transmission was guaranteed. Moreover, there was a small waterfall at the top of the west side of Yinshan Mountain. When the time came, he could put a hydroelectric generator under the waterfall and connect a wire back. Then, he could find a way to make a light bulb. Wouldn't he be able to achieve electric lighting? Although he did not have the metal tungsten needed to make the filament of the electric lamp, who said that only tungsten could be used to make the filament. Other conductive materials could be used to make it, but the lifespan was shorter. Lisa Schwann couldn't help but feel excited at the thought of having the opportunity to use the electric lamp in Tang Empire. When this guy returned home, he went straight to his study and ignored the outside world. He was only focused on electricity research. Your Majesty, bad news, bad news. Night fell, Ganlu Palace. A young eunuch suddenly ran in a panic and said as he ran. Zhao Song, who was standing not far away from Lier, glared at the young eunuch. He thought to himself that this guy really didn't know how to speak. What did he mean by Your Majesty, bad news? Wasn't he cursing Lier? Why are you in such a panic? Tell me quickly. Lier didn't think much of it. He only frowned slightly and asked. The young eunuch hurriedly said, Your Majesty, His Highness King of Wei. His Highness King of Wei is seriously ill and can't get up. What? Qing K's ill. Lier stared and suddenly stood up. He shouted at the young eunuch, Why is Qing K ill? Wasn't he fine in the morning? Why is he suddenly so ill and can't get up? Imperial physician? Where's the imperial physician? Why aren't you calling for the imperial physician? The young eunuch said with a sobbing tone, Your Majesty, we have already called for the imperial physician, but the imperial physician said, Clang. At this moment, the sound of a porcelain plate falling to the ground came from the entrance of the palace. Lier, who was upset, thought that some servant had accidentally broken the flower pot or something. He wanted a reprimand, but when he looked up, he was stunned and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Lier quickly walked down and greeted the person at the entrance of the palace. He said, Mei Guanyin, what's wrong with Qing Ke? Tell me what's wrong with Qing Quebec. The person who came was Empress Zhang's son. Seeing that it was already late at night, she wanted to send some refreshments to Lier, but who would have thought that just as she arrived, she would hear such shocking news? Her entire face instantly turned ghastly pale. At this moment, she couldn't care about being rude. As if she didn't see Lier, she rushed to the young eunuch and asked with a hoarse voice. Yes, hoarse. As a mother, there is no news more shocking than this. Chapter 906. This afternoon, Prince Wei, young Master Zhang's son, and young Master Cheng were playing football on the lawn outside Plum Village. After returning from the game, Prince Wei started vomiting and having diarrhea right after dinner. At first, the official of the Prince Wei's residence thought that the food was not clean, so he severely punished the steward of the kitchen. The medical officer of the Prince Wei's residence thought that Prince Wei had eaten something bad, so they prescribed a prescription to stop diarrhea. After Prince Wei took it, not only did His Highness's illness not get better, but became even worse. Now Prince Wei is about to vomit his bile and poop his intestines out. Li Er and his wife were worried about their son. Ignoring the fact that it was already late, the two of them left the palace. On the way to the Prince Wei's residence, the eunuch who came to report first had the chance to explain the details to Li Er. Li Er's face darkened as he asked, "What did the imperial physician say?" The young eunuch replied, "Replying to your majesty." In a moment of desperation, the Wei Wangfu's official hurriedly went to invite old imperial physician Qin and old imperial physician Wang. However, after the two imperial physicians took His Highness's pulse, they said that His Highness the Prince of Wei is Empress Zhang's son asked anxiously, "What illness is my son suffering from? Tell me quickly." The eunuch trembled as he said, "Your Majesty, the two imperial physicians said that Prince Wei is suffering from cholera." Cholera? Even though Li Er and Empress Zhang's son were mentally prepared, they were still shocked when they heard these two words. After the shock, Empress Zhangxuan's face instantly turned pale. This was because those who contracted this illness were basically half a step into the gates of hell. Bastard! Qin Ke was originally fine. Why would she suddenly have cholera? Investigate. Zhao Song. Bring people to investigate properly. Let's see if there is someone who is so daring as to poison my son. Focus on the food and water sources that Qin Ke has been eating recently. Although Li Er's heart was also very uncomfortable, he was still a man, so his expression was still considered calm. However, as an emperor, it was inevitable that he would have some persecution paranoia. He felt that there were always unruly people who wanted to harm his son. Therefore, he ordered with a gloomy face and a cold voice. "Yes, sir." At this juncture, Zhao Song did not dare to be careless. He responded and went to make the arrangements. "Dugu Xin, this general is here. Immediately send someone to invite all the imperial physicians in the Imperial Physician Bureau, regardless of whether they are asleep or not, to the Prince of Wei's mansion. As you command. Also, send someone to the Taibai Mountain area and see if they can find Dr. Sun." After Li Er made some arrangements, he was still worried. He placed his hopes on Sun Simiao again. However, this old man was traveling the world with his disciple to save the living beings of the world. His whereabouts were erratic. So how could it be so easy to find him? Dugu Xin understood this as well. He pursed his lips and hesitated for a moment before cupping his fists and replying, "This general obeys." Li Tai had contracted such a life-threatening illness. Now that things had reached this point, as his subjects, they could only do their best and leave the rest to fate. They only hoped that they would not be implicated when the time came. "Greetings, Your Majesty. Greetings, Your Majesty." A quarter of an hour later, Li Er and Empress Zhang's son finally arrived at the Wei Prince's mansion. Ignoring the servant salutes, Li Er directly asked with a sullen face, "Where is Qin Ke? Bring me there." "Your Majesty, His Highness Prince Wei is in the backyard." Sai, Your Majesty, you and Her Majesty are of great value. You can't just go there like this." Officer Wu of the Wei Prince's mansion was halfway through his words when he saw that Li Er and Emperor Zhang's son were about to enter. He quickly stopped them. "Bastard, get out of my way." Li Er was furious. Although cholera was contagious, it was only transmitted through food and water. Officer Wu was making a big fuss over nothing. Besides, even if there was a risk of him being infected, he had to go there at this time. The young man inside was his son. Therefore, at this moment, he did not care about the harmony between the monarch and his subjects. He directly pushed Officer Wu far away with one hand, and then quickly walked to the backyard with Empress Zhang's son. A large group of people behind hurriedly followed behind. When they arrived at the backyard, they saw that a side room was brightly lit. Without needing to ask, Li Er directly walked to that room. As soon as he got close to that room, he smelled a disgusting stench that almost suffocated him to death. But at this moment, his son was still on the verge of death. How could he have the time to complain about the stench? Emperor Zhang's son did not even frown as the husband and wife pushed the door and entered just like that. Since the two of them were already like this, how could the large group of people behind dare to complain about the stench and not enter? Therefore, one by one, they resisted the urge to vomit and all went in. Chinke, how are you? The first thing she saw was Li Tai lying on the bed with a pale face. Beside the bed was a wooden basin and a toilet bowl. The stench in the room came from these two things. Empress Zhongsun saw that her son was weak and on the verge of death. She staggered 2 steps and walked over. She touched Li Tai's cheek and said sorrowfully. Hearing Empress Zhongsun's voice, Li Tai opened his eyes with difficulty and said weakly, Imperial Mother is here. You go out quickly. It stinks here. I'll be fine after resting for 2 days. Don't worry. Hearing him say that, Empress Zhongsun, a strong woman of a generation, also felt grief from the bottom of her heart. She could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes and immediately burst out. Silly child, Imperial Mother is not afraid of the stench. Chinke, quickly tell Imperial Mother, how are you feeling now? Li Tai forced a smile on his face, but it was a smile that was uglier than crying. Your son is fine. Mother Empress, you should leave quickly. Ugh, quickly bring the wooden basin over. Seeing this, Elder Wu hurriedly roared at the maidservants beside the bed. The maidservants hurriedly picked up the wooden basin and brought it to Li Tai's side. Ugh. Li Tai hugged the wooden basin and began vomiting with heart-wrenching pain. However, Empress Zhongsun could clearly see that Li Tai was vomiting no food at all, only yellow water. He must have already vomited everything in his stomach earlier. Seeing this scene, Empress Zhongsun couldn't help but be heartbroken. Lier also saw it, and his face was now darker than the bottom of a pot. He said gloomily, Duguexin, where are the imperial physicians? Why aren't the imperial physicians here yet? Send someone to invite them again. Those who don't come, prepare to be sent to the borders. Duguexin had no choice but to quickly cup his fists and say, Yes, Your Majesty. Coincidentally, at this moment, a group of soldiers entered the backyard. It was the Imperial Guards under Duguexin's command. Among the Imperial Guards, there were many people mixed in, and all of them were disheveled. They must have been caught directly from their beds. Your Majesty, all the Imperial physicians from the Imperial Physician Bureau have been brought here. A deputy general jogged over and cupped his fists. Lier nodded and walked around the general. He walked to the front of the Imperial physicians and said sternly, Qing Ke is sick. You all go in immediately for consultation. Those who can cure Qing Ke's illness will be heavily rewarded. If none of you can cure her... Chapter 907. In the Prince of Wei's residence. Lier's cold snort was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, he was willing to become a tyrant for his beloved son. The Imperial physicians were dragged out of their beds. They were still full of resentment, but Lier's words made everyone shudder. They quickly perked up and went in to see the doctor. Your Majesty. At this moment, Zhao Song appeared out of nowhere. He went to Lier's side and called out softly. Lier nodded, and the two of them went to another side room. Have you found out? Was there anyone who poisoned him? Lier put his hands behind his back and asked with murderous intent. Zhao Song bowed and said, Your Majesty, before you came, this old servant, along with Imperial Physician Wang and Imperial Physician Qin, inspected the food that Prince of Wei had for dinner. We did not find any abnormalities. We also checked the water source of the Prince of Wei's residence. We did not find any abnormalities. Lier frowned and said unhappily, Why would the green sparrow suddenly have cholera when it was perfectly fine? Zhao Song continued, Your Majesty, I heard from the servant who went out with Prince of Wei that Prince of Wei, Zhang Sun Chong, Chung Chumo, Yuchi Baolin, and the rest felt thirsty after playing football outside Plum Village. They drank from the Bar River beside Plum Village. I think the problem should be there. Lier said in disbelief, Then why was Qing Ke the only one? Knock, knock, knock. At this moment, there was a knock on the door, followed by Dugu Xian's hurried voice. Your Majesty, I have something to report. Lier could only wave his sleeves and say, Come in. With a creak, Dugu Xian squeezed in from outside the door. Without waiting for Lier to ask, Dugu Xian cupped his fists and said anxiously, Your Majesty, this general has just received news that the young masters of the Chung clan, Yuchi clan, Zhongsun clan, and Sun clan have all fallen seriously ill. Their illnesses are very similar to Prince Wei's. Now, the state dukes and Sun Shaoqing are all looking for imperial physicians to treat their young masters. Li Er's expression changed. What he said really came true. The current situation was obviously because the water in the Ba River was not clean, causing Li Tai and the rest to suffer from cholera at the same time. The situation had already escalated, and the situation had become even more severe. Li Er furrowed his brows and didn't say a word. At this time, the sound of a few people talking came from outside the room. Li Er flicked his sleeves and went out. He saw the imperial physicians standing in the courtyard, as if they were discussing something. Do the imperial physicians have a way to cure Qingke? Li Erlong walked over with large strides and asked straightforwardly. The imperial physicians who had been discussing among themselves immediately lowered their heads. The entire courtyard was silent. Li Er's face was getting darker and darker. He was about to explode when an old man walked out from the crowd. It was Dr. Qin from the Imperial Medical Department, who had accompanied Li Zexuan to attack Snake Spirit Mountain and tested the poison with his own body. Your Majesty, according to our joint diagnosis, His Royal Highness Duke of Wei's illness is cholera. It comes with a ferocious momentum and can empty a person's body in an extremely short period of time. According to the ancient books, there is no effective treatment method, so we are not confident that we can cure His Royal Highness Duke of Wei. All I can do is try my best to delay the onset of His Highness King Wei's illness so that His Highness King Wei can hold on for another 2 days. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. All the imperial physicians cast a grateful look at Dr. Qin and then bowed to Li Er. Li Er's eyes were cold and said coldly, Imperial Physician Qin, is there really no way? There are still good elixirs in the palace's warehouse. Jin allows you to take them as you wish. As long as you can cure Qingke, Jin will give you whatever you want. Dr. Qin shook his head expressionlessly and said, His Highness's illness is not something that can be cured with medicine. Forgive me for being powerless. You. Li Er was furious, and his eyes revealed a bloodthirsty light. Your Majesty, please calm down. At this critical moment, Empress Zhongsun came out of the house. In less than an hour, Zhongsun's face seemed to have aged a few years. She looked even more haggard. The tears on her face had not dried yet, and her eyes were red. God knows what kind of rough journey she had experienced during this period of time. When Li Er saw this, he couldn't help but feel pain in his heart. This woman was the devil of his life. Your Majesty, Imperial Physician Qin, and the others have done their best. Please don't punish them. Empress Zhongsun took her husband's hand and said softly. Li Er didn't say a word. He just nodded his head silently. In fact, how could he not understand that the chances of Li Tai's illness being cured were very small? So, he was just angry because he couldn't do anything. He was a dignified emperor, in charge of the fate of millions of people. But in the end, he couldn't save his son. How sad. Imperial Physician Qin, I will leave Qingke to you. You just do your best. If you can save him, that's the best. If you can't save him, this empress will not blame you. Empress Zhongsun looked at Dr. Qin and said in a kind tone. But when she said the last few words, her heart instantly collapsed. But she forced herself not to cry out. Dr. Qin had lived for a long time. He had already seen too much of the world. So, how could he not hear that Empress Zhongsun was pretending to be kind? They all said that doctors have the heart of a parent. This kind of scene, he also felt uncomfortable. Your Highness, don't worry. This old man will do his best to save Prince Wei. Dr. Qin solemnly cupped his hands, then picked up the medicine box and walked with Dr. Wang to Li Tai's room. Your Majesty, Dugu Xian wanted to say something but stopped. Lier understood what he wanted to say and said, "Immediately choose 8 imperial physicians and escort them to Wuji, Jijia, Jingda, and Sun Fujia's houses. Yes, your majesty. Immediately order the county magistrates to send out bailiffs and prohibit the people from drinking the water of Ba River." Lier added another sentence. Now that things had developed to this point, it was no longer his family's matter. As an emperor, he could occasionally be emotional, but most of the time, he had to maintain his rationality. "Yes, your majesty." Dugu Xin received the order and left. After a while, another soldier came to report, "Your majesty, his highness the crown prince, Princess Changel, and his highness the king of Han request an audience." Hearing this, Li Er's heart finally warmed a little. He nodded and said, "Let them all in. It's good to see Qin Ke." As Li Er expected, the current situation had rapidly deteriorated and was becoming more and more intense. The houses of the Cheng, Zhang Sun, Yuqi, and Sun families were all brightly lit tonight. The madams of the 4 families shed countless tears. Chang and City at night suddenly had a trace of solemnity. What was more serious was that outside Chang and City, many people were suffering tonight. Unfortunately, the number of people infected with cholera was increasing. Chapter 908. Li Zishuan, who was far away from the commotion, slept very soundly that night. This guy was designing the generator in the study and had used up a lot of brain cells. He also drew a lot of blueprints. He was a little tired and fell asleep on the table. Han Yushi was afraid that it would be cold at night, and Li Zishuan would get sick from the cold. In fact, even if this guy was left asleep outside for a night, he would not get sick, so she called Xiao He and Xiao Shi, and the 3 of them carried Li Zishuan into the bedroom together. Of course, Li Zishuan was conscious during this period. The sharp senses of a martial arts grandmaster were not just for show. However, his nose twitched, and he knew who was next to him, so he allowed the 3 of them to move him in. After settling Li Zishuan down, Han Yushi returned to the study and carefully put away the blueprints that Li Zishuan drew. She put them in the small drawer of the desk. After locking it, she double-checked it before returning to the room with the key and lying down beside Li Zishuan. Although she couldn't understand those blueprints, the entire Li family, except for Lan Er, treated Li Zishuan's blueprints with the highest confidentiality standard. They were afraid that others would take advantage of it if it was leaked. Although Li Zishuan had said many times that there was no need to be so serious, the Li family style of doing things had never changed. The night went by uneventfully. Li Zishuan, who was overworked, didn't even do any exercise in bed. He slept comfortably all the way until dawn. He was truly exhausted from yesterday. It was early in the morning, so little Zishuan was naturally in high spirits. Li Zishuan originally wanted to make up for last night's exercise, but Han Yushi had foreseen it and avoided it. Now that Li Jingma, Madame Li, and Lan were living with him, how could she let her husband do whatever he wanted in broad daylight? "Husband, quickly wash up and come down for breakfast. I put the blueprints you drew yesterday in the drawer. The key is under the pillow. Don't be as tired as yesterday." Han Yushi finished, speaking in a panic, and then ran downstairs as if she was escaping. This girl seems to have gained some experience in the revolutionary struggle. Li Zishuan rubbed his nose and said shamelessly, Cloud Mountain was filled with warmth, but the situation in Chang and City was not so good. "Your Majesty, the civil and military officials are already waiting outside the Taiji Palace. What do you think about this morning court session?" Inside Prince Wei's mansion, Zhao Song, with a pair of panda eyes, asked Li Er carefully. In fact, he was not the only one with panda eyes. The entire Prince Wei's residence, including Li Tai, did not sleep for the entire night. Li Tai was no exception. After a night of pooping and vomiting, he felt a burning pain in his anus. He felt that he would rather die than suffer. Inform the officials that the court will be suspended for today. If there are any important matters, submit the memorials to the auxiliary machine to the Minister of Affairs. Xianling and Ru Hui will deal with it on behalf of us. Li Er rubbed his glabella and said in a low voice, He wanted to ask Zhang Sun Wuji to deal with it on behalf of him, but he suddenly remembered that Zhang Sun Wuji was probably in the same situation as him. They did not sleep for the entire night and might not even come to the morning court session. Thus, he changed his words. Zhao Song cupped his hands and said, "Yes, your majesty." Then, he called a young eunuch and asked him to pass the imperial decree to the palace. He continued to stand beside Li Er and serve him. "What's the situation inside now?" Li Er sighed and asked softly. "Your majesty, Prince Wei's body is too weak now. We can't use too much medicine. Last night, a few imperial physicians discussed and came up with a compromise. Prince Wei has already taken it." Prince Wei finally fell asleep when the sky was about to brighten. The number of times he went to the toilet has also decreased. Zhao Song hesitated for a moment and cupped his hands to report. Li Er's heart sank. He was not a 3-year-old child. Zhao Song was obviously reporting the good news and not the bad news. "It's been so long. Has Qin Ke eaten?" Zhao Song's face instantly turned ugly. Seeing Li Er looking at him with burning eyes, he could only tell the truth. Imperial physician Qin said that whatever Prince Wei eats now, he will vomit or poop. For Prince Wei, food is not only unable to replenish his energy, but it will also worsen his body's weakness. Therefore, it is not suitable for Prince Wei to eat at the moment. But if a person doesn't eat, how long can he live? Li Er slapped the stone table and said sullenly, "Your Majesty, please calm down." Imperial physician Qin said that for now, we can only use medicine to keep Prince Wei's life. Then, we will think of another way. Zhao Song said carefully. Imperial father, as the two of them spoke, Li Changxian, Changle, and Li Ku walked out of the room. The three of them had red eyes. Only then did Li Er put away the gloominess on his face. He turned around and nodded at his 3 children. "Qin Ke is asleep?" Li Changxian nodded and replied, "Yes, Imperial father." Li Er looked at Changle. The little girl's face was like a pear blossom in the rain. She must have shed a lot of tears earlier. His heart felt as if it had been stabbed by a knife. It hurt more than being stabbed on the battlefield. "Changle, go back to the palace with your mother to rest. Don't worry, Qin Ke will get better," Li Er said gently. Changle wanted to say no, but when she met Li Er's bloodshot eyes, her heart hurt even more. In order not to worry Li Er, she could only nod silently. The moment she turned around, she could not help but ask, "Imperial father, will Brother Qin Ke really be fine?" Ever since Li Tai became Li Zishuan's disciple, his temperament had changed a lot. He doted on his sister even more. Naturally, she respected her brother Li Tai even more. When she suddenly heard the bad news last night, she felt as if the world was falling apart. It was hard for her to accept this reality. When Li Er heard this, he felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart. He felt indescribably uncomfortable. "Don't worry, Changle. Qin Ke will definitely be fine. Quickly go back and rest." Changle nodded firmly. "Yes, Brother Qin Ke will definitely be fine." With that, she turned around and walked into the room. However, she muttered to herself in the air, "If only Brother Xiao Xian was here. He will definitely not let anything happen to Brother Qin Ke." Li Zishuan. The 4 people present were all shocked, and they were all dumbfounded. The air seemed to have frozen at this moment. Zhao Song, quickly go to Yinshan and bring Li Zishuan here. Not long after, Li Er suddenly stood up and ordered Zhao Song. Although he was not sure if Li Zishuan could treat cholera, Li Zishuan had been creating miracles since the moment he entered Chang and City this year. Someone who could cure Qin Xiong, who was covered in injuries, must have a way to deal with cholera. Moreover, Li Tai's life was hanging by a thread. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, he was willing to try. Otherwise, he would not have sent people to Taibai Mountain to look for Sun Simiao last night. "Yes, Your Majesty." Chapter 909. His Majesty is not feeling well today, so he will not attend court for a day. If the officials have urgent matters, hand over the memorials to Minister Fong and Minister Du to deal with them. Outside Taiji Palace, the officials who had been waiting for a long time without seeing Li Erzhao and the others enter the palace, suddenly received such a decree. They couldn't help but discuss in private. What's going on today? Duke Qi didn't come, Duke Lu didn't come, Duke Yuqi Jingde didn't come, and now His Majesty didn't come either. In the first year of Jingguan, Zhangsun Wuji was promoted to Minister of Appointments and was awarded the title of Duke Qi. Something big must have happened. Since His Majesty ascended the throne, he has always been diligent and loved the people. There has never been a situation where he didn't attend morning court. What big thing can happen? Besides, even if something happened, it's impossible for so many officials to not come at the same time, right? Fang Xianling saw the commotion below and couldn't help but stand up and say loudly, "Colleagues, if you have something, please hand over the memorials to me. If there is nothing, please return to your offices and do your duties." As the Prime Minister of the Empire, Fang Xianling still had a lot of prestige. As soon as his voice fell, the officials immediately quieted down. Qin Xiong's eyes flashed, and he turned to leave without saying a word. He also felt that something was wrong, so he wanted to go to Cheng Mansion and Yuqi Mansion to take a look. Damn, you're all a bunch of quacks. You don't give my son food. Do you want him to starve to death? Cheng Mansion backyard. Cheng Yaojin slammed his palm on the stone table in the courtyard and said angrily with his eyes red. As soon as he finished speaking, the stone table exploded from the middle with a bang and scattered on the ground. The imperial physician in front of him said helplessly, "Duke Lu, please calm down. Your son can't eat now. You are harming him by letting people feed him. To tell you the truth, His Highness Prince Wei is also using the same treatment method." Cheng Yaojin said angrily, "Nonsense. I only know that if a person doesn't eat, they won't last many days. You bunch of quacks can't save people, but you are still harming people here. Duke Lu, if you insist on letting your son eat, he won't last 3 days. If he doesn't eat, he can last at least 5 more days." The imperial physician said angrily. Anyone who was scolded by Cheng Yaojin as a quack would also be annoyed. "Master, don't say any more. Let's listen to the imperial physician." Madame Cheng wiped her tears and pulled her husband who had lost his mind. Listen to my ass. Steward, immediately send someone to Cloud Mountain and invite little Xian over. Cheng Yaojin flicked his sleeves, turned around, and left. Marquis of Yong. If Duke of Lu invites the Marquis of Yong and over, there might still be a chance to turn things around. When the imperial physician heard Cheng Yaojin mention Li Zishuan, his eyes lit up as he muttered in his heart, Marquis, bad news, something big has happened." Cloud Mountain Villa. Li Zishuan was having breakfast with his family in the living room when he heard Pang Feiji's wailing outside. "What's the fuss about? Come. Have you eaten breakfast? If you haven't, let's sit down and eat together." Li Zishuan looked at Pang Feiji, who was panting at the door, and said angrily, "Marquis, what time is it now? You should stop eating. Something big has happened. Quickly follow me into the city." Pang Feiji waved his hand and complained helplessly. Li Zishuan asked curiously, "What happened? Why are you so anxious?" Pang Feiji saw that Li Zishuan didn't seem to care, so he didn't beat around the bush and said directly, "Marquis, I've received news that Prince Wei, Cheng Chumo, Yuqi Baolin, and Sun Zifan contracted cholera at the same time yesterday. Their lives are hanging by a thread, and they are in imminent danger. Marquis, quickly go and take a look." Cholera. Li Jingma, Mrs. Li, and Han Yushi's expressions changed drastically when they heard this. Li Zishuan was also shocked. He subconsciously thought that Pang Feiji was talking nonsense. The memory of his previous life told him that cholera was only introduced into China at the end of the Qing Dynasty. How could such an acute infectious disease appear in this era? However, from the memory of this body, Li Zishuan found that there were already records of cholera in medical books from before. After carefully comparing the memories of the two lives in his mind, Li Zishuan realized that this cholera was not the same cholera. There was a substantial difference between the two. The cholera that modern people talked about usually referred to Hulila, which was an acute diarrheal disease caused by contaminated food or water ingested by Vibrio cholerae. In the TV series Chuangwendong, the Japanese child Ichiro was saved by Shoair, but was thrown out by her father because Ichiro might have gotten Hulila. Scholars believe that the cholera caused by Vibrio cholerae, or Hulila, was introduced into China in 1820, the 25th year of the Qing Dynasty. According to Song Rilin in the preface of Lin Sen's Complete Cholera Diseases, he said, "In the autumn of Jiaqinggongchen, 1820, many people vomited and had diarrhea. The following year, Xinzi became even more severe." It also said this disease began in Guangdong, and this year in Fujian in Taiwan, the patients were especially severe. In the 7 major cholera epidemics in the world, China was always the most severely affected area. During the 2 epidemics, there were many patients and many died. During the Qing Dynasty, cholera was very contagious. Sometimes, when a coffin was carried to the funeral, he died before the coffin was carried to the place. This was a situation that occurred continuously in Dandong, called Annong at that time, 20 years after the Qing Dynasty. However, the cholera mentioned by the ancients did not completely correspond to Hulila. It could be a simple symptom of vomiting and diarrhea, like the acute gastroenteritis that was common in summer and autumn. The so-called cholera was sudden. The so-called cholera was a sudden illness that occurred suddenly. This term existed before the Han Dynasty and was not translated from modern times. As early as in the inner canon of a Yellow Emperor, there were already records of cholera. For example, the Spiritual Pivot 5 Chaos chapter said, "When the stomach is in chaos, it is cholera." The Suan Qi communication theory said, "When the earth is not old enough, the people suffer from cholera." The Suan 6 Elements of the Righteous Era said, "When the moon is full of cholera, it vomits." The plague that the army suffered in the process of marching was mostly cholera. When cholera occurred, the soldiers suffered heavy casualties. Before the war even began, most of them were already dead. With regards to cholera, the ancients mainly focused on prevention and treatment as a supplement. In general, there was no special treatment for this kind of Class A infectious disease. During the Taihe period of the Jin Dynasty, the monks of Guangji Temple suffered from cholera. A necromancer used monk's hood and dried ginger to cure them. After drinking it, they forced out a few mouthfuls of blood and then died. Therefore, when the medical officials of the Imperial Medical Department faced Li Tai whose life was hanging by a thread, they were collectively helpless. It was not that they were incompetent, but that the cholera was too strong. "Where's the Marquis of Yong'an? His Majesty summons you to return to Chong, and immediately." At this moment, a sharp voice came from outside, waking Li Zishuan from his daze. Chapter 9-10. Just as he finished speaking, the eunuch who came to deliver the edict appeared at the door. Li Zishuan and the rest hurriedly stood up to welcome him. Seeing that there was no way he could continue eating, he said to his father, "Father, you guys continue eating. I'll go back to Chong and take a look." Li Jingma said worriedly, "Lil Xian, that's cholera. Are you confident?" He did not object to his son saving Li Tai, but he was worried that if he could not save him, he would be implicated. After all, the royal family was the most heartless. Li Zishuan understood what his father was worried about. He smiled and said, "Father, don't worry. I still have some confidence." Even if he did not have confidence, he should still go to Chong and to see Li Tai. But coincidentally, he did know an ingenious method to treat cholera. "Little Xian, you have to be careful," Madame Li said worriedly. Li Zishuan said, "Mother, it's fine. I'll be back soon." After saying that, he prepared to leave with the young eunuch beside him, who was already anxious to the point of smoke coming out of his head. Who knew at this moment? "Marquis Yong'an, my master invites you to see my eldest young master. May I trouble you?" An old man appeared outside the door. It was the Chung Manor's housekeeper Liang. Li Zishuan recognized him at a glance. Housekeeper Liang was halfway through his sentence when he saw the eunuch beside Li Zishuan. He immediately shut his mouth, not knowing what to do. Obviously, he had guessed that this eunuch was here to ask Li Zishuan to treat Li Tai's illness. How could he ask for it? Was he going to snatch the person in front of everyone? But Cheng Chumo was also bedridden. Li Zixuan was his only hope. If he did not invite Li Zixuan back, what would happen to Cheng Chumo? "Oh, Uncle Liang, you're here." Li Zixuan thought for a moment and understood the purpose of housekeeper Liang's visit. He took the initiative to welcome him and said, "How is Chon Yo? Does the imperial physician have any countermeasures?" Head steward Liang said with a distressed expression, "Eldest young master had diarrhea for an entire night, and his stomach was empty, but he still couldn't resist going to the toilet. The imperial physician didn't allow him to eat. So old master asked me to invite the Marquis of Yong and to the manor to see if there's a way to treat my young master's illness." The little eunuch beside him immediately became anxious and stepped forward to say, "Marquis Yong and His Majesty and Her Highness are waiting for you. You should quickly follow us to save King Wei." Housekeeper Liang pursed his lips. He wanted to say something, but at this time, he couldn't possibly ask Li Zixuan to go against the order and save Cheng Chumo, right? That would be too selfish. Li Zixuan didn't know if Li Tai and Cheng Chumo's situation was serious or not. It would be bad if something happened to the other when he went to save one of them. After pondering for a moment, he raised his head and said decisively, "Uncle Liang, send Chumo to King Wei's manor in a moment. I will treat the two of them together. I will explain the situation to His Majesty." The little eunuch wanted to say something, but he was intimidated by Li Zixuan's reputation and didn't say anything in the end. As long as Li Zixuan could go to King Wei's manor as soon as possible, head steward Liang said gratefully, "Thank you, Marquis Yon. I will go back and tell old master now." Li Zixuan quickly added, "All right, I'll have to trouble Uncle Liang to inform Uncle Yuqi, the Sun family, and the Zhang Sun family to send Yuqi Baolin, Sun Zifan, and Zhang Sun Chong over." Saving one person was the same as saving 5 people. He might as well solve them all at once. Head steward Liang naturally agreed. Li Zixuan followed the little eunuch on horseback to Chang'an City. "Your Majesty, the Marquis Yong and is here." In King Wei's manor, just as Li Er and Empress Zhang Sun were panicking, a guard ran over and cupped his fists. Li Er's expression brightened. He raised his head and said hurriedly, "Let him in." "Yes, Your Majesty." After a while, Li Zixuan walked in and bowed. "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Greetings, Your Majesty." Li Erda waved his hand and said, "There's no need to be so courteous. Li Zixuan, I'm sure you've heard about the matter. Qin Ke has contracted cholera, and the imperial physicians are all helpless. Although you don't specialize in medicine, you always have some unexpected methods to treat illnesses and save lives. We called you here today to ask if you can treat cholera." Before this, who would have thought that this half-grown youth would become the last hope of a country's ruler? Li Zixuan didn't immediately agree. Instead, he said, "May I take a look at King Wei's current condition? Everything will have to wait for me to take a look." Li Er nodded and said, "Zhao Song, bring the Marquis Yuan in." In the past, he used to address Li Zixuan as a brat. Now that Li Zixuan had become Li Tai's last hope, Li Er's address of Li Zixuan became more formal. "Yes, Your Majesty." Zhao Song cupped his fists in acknowledgement. Li Zixuan followed Zhao Song to the side room to visit Li Tai. As they approached the side room, Li Zixuan could smell the stench rolling in. He quickly held his breath. He glanced at Zhao Song from the corner of his eye and saw that the latter's chest was not rising and falling. He knew that this old man must be holding his breath like him. Entering the side room, it was filled with imperial physicians and servants. These people had been exposed to the stench for an entire night and must have developed immunity. No one was covering their noses and mouths. Of course, there were a few familiar faces among these people. Dr. Wang and Dr. Qin from the Imperial Physicians Department, who had helped Li Zixuan previously. Li Zixuan smiled and nodded at them. Then, he looked at Li Tai, who was lying on the bed with a weak breath and had already fainted. He was immediately shocked when he saw him. Previously, during the military training at the academy, Li Tai had grown from a fatty who weighed 200 pounds to a normal man who weighed 120 to 30 pounds. But now, after being sick for a day, he seemed to have become even thinner. This cholera was really ferocious. In just one day, it could torture someone to this extent. If this were to continue for a few more days, Li Tai's life would be gone. Xiao Xian, how is it? Is there any way to save him? Unknowingly, Li Er had walked in. He looked at Li Zishuan and asked in a low voice. To his delight, Li Zishuan actually nodded. Your Majesty, from the feces and vomit, we can conclude that Qin Ke has indeed contracted cholera. This subject has a method that may be able to cure this illness, but whether it will work or not, this subject is not 100% sure. Even if it was not 100%, it should be at least 60 to 70%, right? Li Er was ecstatic. Li Zishuan said that he was not 100% sure, but the imperial physicians were not even 10% sure. It was clear who was better and who was worse. Good. I believe in you. Whatever you need, just let me know. There are many rare herbs in the palace storehouse. I can give them all to you as long as you can cure Qingchue's illness. Chapter 911. Your Majesty, I don't need those top-grade herbs for the time being. Let's wait for the others to come first before treating them together. Prince Wei's mansion, back room. Li Zishuan didn't take advantage of the sudden generosity of Li Er. Besides, his method didn't require any precious herbs. The others? Li Er was puzzled and asked, who else? Li Zishuan quickly explained, Your Majesty, I heard that Shumo, Baolin, Sun Zifan, and Zhang Sunshone were all infected with cholera. Like Qin Quebec treating them is like putting out a fire, so I thought of gathering them together to treat them together. I hope Your Majesty will allow it. This was acting first and reporting later. The matter had already been done, and now it was just a formality to inform Li Er. However, Li Er's mood was much better than before, so he said, no matter, then let's wait for them to come together. In the end, wasn't Li Zishuan willing to come here first because he was the emperor? But even if he was the emperor, he couldn't keep hogging Li Zishuan and delay the treatment of the others. Just as the two of them were talking, there was a commotion in the front yard of the Prince Wei's mansion. Immediately after, a guard came in and reported, Your Majesty, Duke Lu, Duke Yi, Duke Qi, and Sun Shaoqing have brought their respective young masters over. Li Zishuan thought to himself that the speed was fast, while Li Er looked at Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan quickly cupped his hands and said, Your Majesty, why don't you place them in this room so that I can treat them at the same time? Li Er then instructed the guard, Do as the Marquis of Yong'an says. Yes. Not long after, Zhang Sun Wuji, Cheng Yaojin, Yuqi Jingde, and Sun Fujia, the four big shots of the imperial court, ordered the servants to carry their sons in on bamboo couches. It was worth mentioning that not only did they carry the people over, but they also brought the toilets and basins. Because their sons had vomited and had diarrhea several times along the way, they couldn't possibly poop on the bamboo couches, right? But their combination looked like they were moving. Greetings, Your Majesty. After the four big shots settled their sons down, they bowed to Li Er one after another. Li Er waved his hand. No need for formalities. Zhang Sun Wuji cupped his hands and said, My son's condition is urgent. I didn't receive Your Majesty's summons and sent him here to seek help. I hope Your Majesty can forgive me. The other three followed suit and cupped their hands in apology. Li Er said warmly, You are too serious. As a father, I understand your difficulties. Zhang Sun Wuji bowed and said, Many thanks, Your Majesty. Then he turned to Li Zishuan and cupped his hands. Marquis Yong'an, I'll leave my son in your care. Among the four families, he was the one with the most estranged relationship with Li Zishuan. The sons of the other three families were all Li Zishuan's first students, so their relationship was naturally not ordinary. Li Zishuan hurriedly returned the greeting and said, I will do my best. Cheng Yaojin and Yuqi Jingde came over and patted Li Zishuan's shoulders. With their family's relationship with Li Zishuan, there was no need to say anything more. If they said anything more, it would make them seem estranged. Sun Fujia also thanked Li Zishuan with a haggard face. The previously lifeless room finally had some vitality at this moment. The imperial physicians, servants, the four big shots who just arrived, as well as Empress Zhang's son who was persuaded by Li Er to go back and rest, and Li Er himself, all placed their hopes on Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan felt an indescribable pressure. He turned around and said to Li Er, Your Majesty's treatment method is a little special. If Your Majesty raises any strange requests later, I hope Your Majesty, Her Majesty, and uncles will not question it. The final treatment effect will only be revealed at the end. Furthermore, the people here must listen to Your Majesty's instructions. This was giving an early warning. Although everyone felt that Li Zishuan's words were a little strange, no one raised any objections. Li Er also nodded and said, No problem. Use whatever methods you have. From now on, all the guards, imperial physicians, and servants in the entire estate will be under your command. After saying that, he sent away Wang Fu's senior official. Senior official Wu, did you hear what we just said? Senior official Wu hurriedly said, Your Majesty will fully cooperate with the Marquis of Yong An's treatment. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Many thanks for Your Majesty's understanding. Now, this subject will begin to treat Qin Ke and the others. Your Majesty, Your Highness, and uncles, please move to the courtyard. Otherwise, it will be inconvenient. Li Er nodded and brought Empress Zhang's son out. Li Chengxian and Li Ke glanced at Li Zishuan and also followed out. As for Changlu, she had already been persuaded by Li Er and Zhang's son to go back and rest. Xiao Xian, the best thing my family's Chonyo did in his life was to have a brother like you. Cheng Yaojin was the last to leave. Before he left, he patted Li Zishuan's shoulder and sighed. Li Zishuan glanced at Cheng Chumo, who was lying on the bamboo couch, and thought to himself that after a while, Cheng Chumo would definitely jump up and say that the thing he regretted the most in his life was having a brother like him. Right? Hey, Xiao Xian, you have a way to treat our illness. That's great. Last night, almost F*King pooped my intestines out. Now, my butt is still burning with pain. Cheng Chumo said intermittently. Among the five of them, he and Yuchi Baolin were in the best condition. After all, the physique of a martial artist was in charge. Li Zishuan didn't waste time talking nonsense with this guy. Instead, he directly instructed the way Wang Fu's official. Official Wu, this marquis needs something. Can you help me find some? Official Wu hurriedly said, Marquis, just tell me what you need. This one will do his best to help you find it. But Li Zishuan's next sentence had the flavor of not giving up until he was shocked to death. Quickly bring some people to help this marquis find some used toilet paper, and also bring over 4 braziers. Remember, they must be used toilet chips, not new ones. Elder Wu was dumbfounded. His brain couldn't wrap itself around it for a moment. What does treating an illness have to do with toilet chips? At this moment, he really wanted to ask Li Zishuan, Are you kidding me? What's wrong? Is there a problem? Li Zishuan saw the situation and asked, No problem. Marquis Yong, and please wait a moment. I'll get someone to do it now. Official Wu wiped his sweat and said hurriedly. Academician Qin couldn't help but ask, Marquis Yong, why are you asking people to search for toilet chips? Li Zishuan smiled and said, Of course it's to treat illnesses. Academician Qin will understand in a while. Puffed. Xiao Xian, you can't be thinking of using toilet chips to treat our illnesses, right? We are brothers. How can you do this? Even if you have to do this, you should at least let us use those and use toilet chips. Cheng Chumo, who was lying on the stretcher, suddenly became agitated and said to Li Zishuan intermittently. Chapter 9:12. High Energy Warning. This chapter is a little strange. Those who are misophobic or are eating, please be careful. Elder Wu, what are you carrying? In the backyard of the Prince of Wei's residence, all the parents were anxiously waiting for Li Zishuan's diagnosis and treatment results. However, They saw Senior Advisor Wu instructing people to carry 5 braziers and a basket of unknown objects into the side room. Out of curiosity, Li Er stopped Elder Wu and asked. Elder Wu's face turned bitter as he answered truthfully, "Your Majesty, the objects in the basket are toilet chips. The Duke of Yong and asked me to find them." When Li Er heard this, his face turned ugly. Toilet chips? What does he need toilet chips for? I do not know. The Duke of Yong and did not tell me. Elder Wu was also puzzled in his heart. He didn't know why Li Zishuan wanted him to find these disgusting things out of the blue. You may go. I will ask him later. Li Er had a bad premonition. However, he had already promised Li Zishuan that everyone would be under his command. How could he go back on his word now? Empress Zhongsun looked at the room with doubt in her eyes. The other big shots also looked at each other in dismay. In the room. Marquis, I brought you the cutlery and brazier you wanted. What else do you need next? After the braziers and toilet chips were moved into the room, Elder Wu cupped his fist and asked Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan looked and nodded. I do not need them for now. Order people to throw the toilet chips into the braziers and bring the braziers to Qing Ke and Chumo's beds. Let the heat dry their bodies. Leave 1 or 2 people to add the toilet chips into the braziers. The rest of you go out first. We will come back in half an hour. This was an indigenous method of treating cholera that Li Zishuan heard from the village doctor in his previous life. It was said that it had cured many people. Cough, cough. Of course, there was no such thing as toilet chips in a modern world. He could only use shit stirrer as a substitute. He didn't have much confidence in this kind of crude recipe, but at this moment, he wanted to try it out to see how effective it was. Moreover, he still had other tricks up his sleeve. When Elder Wu heard this, he was stunned. He finally understood why Li Zishuan wanted him to find these toilets. But why did it sound so unreliable? Marquis, there's no need to ask. Just do as I say. Li Zishuan didn't wait for Elder Wu to ask and waved his hand domineeringly. In fact, even he himself did not know that this method of using toilet cubes to treat cholera had a great background. The Compendium of Materia Medica had a record in the medical devices department. Toilet preparation, attending physician dystocia, cholera and cold body tendons, burning hot air under the bed and spreading it to the upper body. Also, the attending physician is afflicted with evil spirit energy. This item is the smallest, but its power can be recorded, hidden artifact. Don't you think it's unbelievable? Regardless of whether this prescription had a scientific basis or not, there were even more shocking prescriptions in the Compendium of Materia Medica. For example, human urine could treat cold and heat headaches. Pig tying rope was used to treat children's cries of alarm and restless hair. Using the 12th lunar month to burn ashes and drinking a little water. Li Zishuan only remembered that when the old village doctor told him this crude method of using toilet cubes to treat cholera, he secretly laughed in his heart. Those cholera patients must have been cured by the smell of feces, right? Elder Wu saw Li Zishuan's unyielding attitude and could only do as he was told. Chung Chumo, who was lying on the bamboo bed, really sat up in shock. Who knew where this guy got his strength from? He pointed at Li Zishuan and shouted with his eyes wide open. F***CK. Xiao Xian, you can't cheat your brother like this. You're not treating us. You're clearly trying to suffocate us to death. Although he had been suffocated by his own feces for an entire night, how could other people's feces be the same as his own? Many times when you go to the latrine to take a dump, you'll think that the latrine next to you is smelly, but you'll usually not think that your own feces are smelly. Li Zishuan said with a smile, seeing that you're so energetic now, it means that these toilet cubes are very useful. Elder Wu, remember to close all the doors and windows in a while and keep them sealed. After saying that, he ignored Chung Chumo's shouting and turned to leave. The imperial physicians also hurriedly fled. Li Tai, who was unconscious, was faintly awakened by Chung Chumo's loud voice. He said in a daze, "Suffocate to death? What? What's suffocate to death? Chumo, why are you here?" Chung Chumo saw that the doors and windows were closed and couldn't help but feel despair. He was too lazy to talk to Li Tai. At this moment, He couldn't help but feel a pain in his stomach. He hurriedly shouted, "Quick, quick, quick, I want to shit. Hurry." Pooh! Inside the room, the smell of fresh feces, burning feces, and vomiting mixed together. The stench was overwhelming. Even the maids and servants of the prince's residence who had been suffocated for an entire night couldn't stand it anymore. These people probably wouldn't be able to eat for a month, right? Vomit! Li Tai's stomach churned, and he hurriedly turned to the side and vomited into the basin under the bed. The other people lying on the bamboo bed weren't any better. Each of them was suffocated by the stench emitted from the brazier. It wasn't that they didn't want to escape, but they were already exhausted from pooping for an entire night. How could they have the strength to do that? They could only lie on the bamboo bed and silently enjoy it. Outside the room, Li Zixuan saw Li Zixuan walk out and asked, "Li Zhanshu, why did you ask Elder Wu to find the toilet cubes for?" Empress Zhang's son, Cheng Yaojin, and the others also looked over. Li Zixuan didn't dare to directly say that he just wanted to test whether or not the local prescription would work. Instead, he seriously spouted nonsense. "Your Majesty, I put these cubes into the fire and burned them. I want to smoke out the damp and evil aura from Qin Ke and the others' bodies. Then I will supplement it with a few prescriptions to nourish and expel the cold to nurse their bodies and prevent them from having diarrhea." When Li Er heard that Li Zixuan used the cubes to treat Li Tai's illness, his face instantly turned green. He subconsciously suspected that Li Zixuan was purposely messing with his son. But Li Zixuan's later words made it seem like he was serious and reasonable, which made him hesitate for a moment. The main reason was that spiritual master Lingshu's reputation was too great. Otherwise, he would have the thought of chopping Li Zixuan into pieces. After pausing for a moment, Li Er said with a black face, "I will believe you for now. If this still can't cure Qin Ke and the others," he didn't finish the second half of the sentence, but the threat was obvious. Empress Zhang's son, Cheng Yaojin, and the others who originally didn't look good could only swallow their doubts when they heard that Li Er had agreed. Li Zixuan didn't care at all because he was very confident in the other prescriptions in his heart. "Thank you for your trust, Your Majesty." Then he turned and ordered, "Elder Wu, please bring me a brush and ink. I will write a few prescriptions, and then you send someone to get the herbs." Chapter 9:13. Dr. Wu brought over a brush and ink. The imperial physicians couldn't help but gather around, wanting to see what kind of magical prescription Li Zixuan would come up with. Li Zixuan didn't mind them secretly learning from him. He picked up the brush and began to write. First, use 2 qian of dried ginger and 2 qian of wujuyu. Then, use 10 qian of dried ginger and 5 qian of cooked aconite. Fry it for 3 to 4 quarters of an hour. Then, add an appropriate amount of rice. Fry it in warm water. Lastly, add an appropriate amount of fresh ginger and hearth soil. Fry it in water and filter it to remove the dregs. Take it once in the morning and once in the morning. Within 5 days, you will be cured. This prescription was the other prescription for cholera that the old village doctor in his previous life had told him about. Although it was a bit of a folk prescription, it was undoubtedly more scientific than using toilet cubes to treat cholera. Li Zixuan's previous body had been taught by spiritual master Ling Su. Although he had never received a complete teaching of medicine, he had been weak and sickly since he was young. It could be said that he had become a doctor after being sick for a long time. Although his medical skills weren't at Sun Simiao's level, he had a good understanding of the medicinal properties of various Chinese medicines. When Li Zixuan had just transmigrated from the modern world, the fusion between his souls wasn't perfect. Therefore, he didn't have many memories related to medicine at first. However, ever since he had broken through to the realm of martial arts grandmaster, his mental strength had increased exponentially. Gradually, his brain began to have more knowledge about medicine and medicinal herbs. Although it wasn't very systematic or comprehensive, Li Zixuan was still very happy to have an additional skill. When Pang Feiji told him that Li Tai and the others had contracted cholera in the morning, Li Zixuan had been thinking about how to treat cholera. He couldn't help but think of the method that the old village doctor had told him about. Although the old man was just a village doctor in the countryside, he had been practicing medicine for his entire life. His medical skills were extremely high. Moreover, he was proficient in both Chinese and Western medicine. Many large hospitals couldn't easily treat an illness, but in his hands, he might be able to cure it with 2 injections and 2 prescriptions. Moreover, it didn't cost much. Therefore, the old village doctor was very respected in the village. In his previous life, the old village doctor lived right next to Li Zixuan's house. Therefore, Li Zixuan had more contact with him. That was why he knew so many prescriptions. On the way there, Li Zixuan used the memory of his predecessor and began to analyze the prescriptions given by the old village doctor. The more he analyzed, the brighter his eyes became, and the more surprised he became. Only people who were well-versed in pharmacology would understand the true beauty of these prescriptions. This was also the reason why he was so confident when he made the promise to Li Er. As for the toilet chips, it was just an experiment he wanted to do on the spur of the moment. It would be best if he could smoke Li Tai and the others well. It didn't matter if the smoke didn't work. He still had other tricks up his sleeve. This prescription. Brilliant, brilliant. After Li Zixuan put down the brush, Imperial Dr. Qin was the first to exclaim. However, some people didn't understand, so they asked, "Dr. Qin, how is this prescription so brilliant? It's obviously just some common herbs." Imperial Dr. Qin was embarrassed to say that the last part of the prescription was the stove soil. No matter how he looked at it, it was not reliable. Dr. Qin shook his head and said, "It's because it's just some common herbs. That's why the person who came up with this prescription is so brilliant. His medical skills have reached perfection. Everything in his hands can be used as medicine. This Qin is not as good as him. Dr. Qin, why don't you explain it to us? We can learn from it." When the doctors heard Dr. Qin's words, they couldn't help but feel itchy. Dr. Qin stroked his beard and said, "This prescription was written by Marquis Yong, presumably Marquis Yong, and is the most knowledgeable about this prescription. This old man will not show off in front of an expert." Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Dr. Qin is too modest. For the same prescription, different doctors have different opinions. Why don't you tell me your opinion first, and then this young one will use my own opinion to compare with yours. For this young one, this is also a kind of improvement." Dr. Qin looked deeply at Li Zixuan. The admiration in his eyes became more and more intense. Talented, but not arrogant. If this kind of young man can't have a meteoric rise, then it's really unreasonable. Since Marquis Yong insists, then this old man will show his incompetence. Dr. Qin was no longer modest. He thought for a while and said, "Ginger is very hot. It can warm the meridians and stop bleeding. It can also replenish the yang energy. Although Fructus cordialis is a little poisonous, ginger can suppress its toxicity. Moreover, Fructus cordialis itself can strengthen yang energy and stop diarrhea. It can also expel cold and relieve pain. Marquis Yong's first prescription can cure Wei Wang's illness by more than 30%. It can also replenish the lost energy in his body. This is really good. After replenishing the lost energy, the second prescription is even more powerful. It has the intention of following up the victory. Ginger warms the spleen and stomach. Cooked monkshood restores yang energy and relieves yang energy, and japonica rice relieves diarrhea and invigorates the spleen. This prescription, combined with the first prescription, can at least cure Wei Wang's cholera by more than 80%. As for the last prescription, this old man doesn't really understand the use of the hearth soil, so I won't comment on it." All the imperial physicians had a look of sudden realization. They didn't think that these ordinary things would have such a strong effect when put together. It seems like the more expensive something is, the better it is. Li Zixuan clapped his hands and laughed. Dr. Qin's grasp of the medicinal properties of these herbs is really admirable. As for the hearth soil, it is warm and heavy. It warms the stomach and relieves the vomiting. It is mainly used to treat the weak cold in the spleen and stomach, and vomiting caused by the lack of stomach qi. The main purpose of using it here is to strengthen the efficacy of the previous two prescriptions and completely cure Wei Wang's cholera. Dr. Qin's words just now were very correct. As long as one is well-versed in medicine, anything can be used as medicine. As a doctor, one has the responsibility to treat the illness of the patient with the least cost. Of course, this is also the most important part of a doctor's ability. If one uses expensive herbs like ginseng and deer antler when they encounter an illness, how many people in the world can afford to treat the illness? Qin Ke, Chu Mo, and the other's cholera was caused by the water of Ba River. However, Ba River stretches for hundreds of li recently. Tens of thousands of people have drunk the water of Ba River. Before long, there will definitely be hundreds and thousands of cholera patients. As long as my 3 prescriptions are effective, we can use the least cost to pacify this cholera epidemic. At this moment, Lier didn't have time to care about his son who was suffocating in the room. His face had already become incomparably solemn. Good, very good. What Li Zhanshu is worried about is very likely to happen. Although I have already instructed the county magistrates of the counties around Chang and to inform the people not to directly drink the water of Ba River, it is hard to guarantee that there won't be patients who have already drunk the water and contracted cholera. If there is a cheap prescription that can allow ordinary people to treat and cure cholera, it will be a blessing for the people of Tang. Elder Wu, quickly go and get the medicine. Chapter 9:14. Wretch, stop burning. Stop King burning. Don't you think it stinks? Qin, you have to control them. Ching Chumo covered his nose and shouted after he finished pooping in the room. You can't blame him for being unreasonable. The smell in the room was too King strong. He had never been to such a smelly place in his life. CK. Cho Ox, your own poop is already so smelly, and you still have the cheek to criticize others? CK, it stinks. Li Tai was already suffocating from the smell. He covered his nose and mouth with one hand and fanned the air in front of him with the other. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't run, he would have run out of the room long ago. In less than a quarter of an hour, Li Tai felt that the blood in his body was about to be smelly. Today's encounter was likely to leave a deep shadow in his heart. I say, you two still have time to quarrel. Yamacho is just outside. Who would dare to disobey Yamacho's orders? I think we should save our energy. Sun Ziffin leaned over on the bamboo bed and covered his nose as he spoke to the 2 quarreling men. Yuchi Balan nodded and agreed. Yes. Yamacho is treating us. Qin, Brother Cho Ox, stop quarreling. Let's just get smelled a little more. Who knows, we might be cured. I'm still young, and I don't want to die. Ching Chumo was amused by this idiot. Tisk Balan, only you would believe that this is treating us. In my opinion, Yamacho is purposely torturing us. Who uses the toilet to treat people? Yuchi Balan raised his head and thought for a moment. Then, he retorted, Brother Chonyo, you're wrong. Why would the mountain leader torture us for no reason? He must be treating us. We just have to enjoy it. Enjoy? Ching Chumo's eyes widened even more. He pointed at Yuchi Baolin and said, Damn, Baolin, I just realized today that you're such a hardcore person. I'll send you a few baskets of used toilet paper later. You can put them under your bed and enjoy them. How about that? This fellow could only bully an honest man like Li Tai with his words. If he dared to bully Li Tai like that, Li Tai would definitely retaliate in kind. Bah, Brother Chonyo, the enjoyment I'm talking about is the enjoyment of the treatment process. Once I'm cured, I won't touch these toilet chips anymore. Yuchi Baolin hurriedly said, Have you noticed that the 5 of us haven't had diarrhea for a long time? Zhang Sun Chong, who had been lying on the side and enduring the stench for a long time, suddenly spoke. It was true. I haven't had diarrhea for half an hour. It seems like Yamacho's method is really effective. Yuchi Baolin replied with an excited expression. Chung Chumo rubbed his stomach and carefully recalled. He realized that it was just as Zhang Sun Chong said. He had been lying on the bed for nearly half an hour, but what he said just now was still ringing in his ears. How could he have a nerve to change his words now? He could only mutter, maybe our stomachs are empty and there's nothing left to poop? Li Tai also felt that his body seemed to have regained some strength, but he wasn't very sure, so he didn't say anything. At this moment, he looked at the servant next to him who was adding toilet paper to the brazier. He then looked at the bamboo basket next to the servant and saw that the toilet paper inside was almost empty. He said, is this all that's left? The servant had been in Prince Wei's mansion for so long, but perhaps he hadn't been questioned by Li Tai before. At this moment, he couldn't help but feel a little flattered. He hurriedly said, In reply to your highness, this is all that's left. This lowly one was afraid that you would find it smelly, so I burned it a little faster earlier. Li Tai's eyes turned and glanced at Cheng Chimo. Then he chuckled and said, Go and help this prince bring some toilet paper from Cheng Chimo's side. Continue to burn it, but don't burn it too quickly. Save it. This prince is not afraid of the stench. Compared to the terrible pain of almost pooping his intestines last night, Li Tai felt that this stench was still bearable. After all, he had to protect his chrysanthemum. The servant was a servant of Prince Wei's mansion. Of course, he had to listen to Li Tai. At this moment, he hurriedly replied, Yes, your highness. After saying that, he got up and walked over to Cheng Chimo's side. However, Cheng Chimo couldn't stand it. This fellow almost jumped up. He pointed at Li Tai and said angrily, F***CK, Chin K, don't go too far. These toilet paper tokens were given to me. What do you have to ask someone to take them from me? He wasn't stupid. Although he didn't admit it, he knew in his heart that the toilet paper tokens could improve his condition. At this time, how could he give away his portion of the toilet paper tokens? Li Tai said with a smile, Chimo, didn't you just say that it was too smelly and ask people to stop burning the toilet paper tokens? Aren't I helping you? Cheng Chimo immediately shouted, Get lost. I don't need your help. Hey, what are you doing? Don't touch my toilet paper tokens. Do you believe that I won't beat you up? It was the servant of the Prince Wei's mansion who had helped him add the toilet paper tokens to the servant that Li Tai had ordered just now. Cheng Chimo was anxious and wanted to get out of bed to stop it. However, his whole body was weak and his speed was slower by a few beats. He could only watch helplessly as half of his life-saving toilet paper tokens were taken away. Chonyo, we are brothers in any case. Don't be so stingy. You see, I only let them take more than 30%. You still have a lot left. Li Tai smiled and comforted him. Cheng Chimo said indignantly, F***CK, Chin K, what you did was not right. There's so many people in the room and you didn't rob. Why did you have to rob me? Look at Sun Ziffin's basket. Isn't there still so much left? F***CK, Cheng Chimo, shut up. Li Zishuan, who was outside the room instructing the servants to decoct the medicine, naturally did not know that these idiots in the room had begun to act out a shocking show of stealing toilet paper tokens. The servants of the Prince Wei's mansion were very efficient. In less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Li Zishuan had bought the herbs that he wanted. However, he did not manage to buy the hearth soil. How would the pharmacies of this era sell this stuff? However, this was not a problem for Li Zishuan. He personally brought Wu Zishuan to the kitchen of the Prince Wei's mansion and dug out a piece of yellow soil from the bottom of the hearth. He used a knife to remove the black soil and impurities, then handed it to the kitchen manager to decoct the medicine. Wu Zishuan, I have already explained the decoction method to you. You stay here and keep an eye on it. I will go back to the backyard to check on Chin K and the others. Li Zishuan was worried about Li Tai and the others who were being suffocated by feces, so he instructed, Marquis, don't worry. With me here, nothing will go wrong. Wu Zishuan nodded and replied. Only then did Li Zishuan turn around and leave, walking towards the rear courtyard. Chapter 9:15. TSK. It seems like this method is quite effective. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have given you a prescription. I would have gotten someone to find you 2 baskets of toilet paper. Maybe you'll be fine after smoking it for 2 days. When he arrived at the room in the backyard, he could hear Li Tai and Cheng Chimo bickering through the door. Judging from their voices, it didn't seem like they were seriously ill at all. He pushed the door open and said with a smile, "Ah." The two people who were in the middle of bickering were dumbfounded by Li Zishuan's words. A few moments later, Cheng Chumo reacted and angrily said to Li Zishuan, "Young master, you're the one who gave the order." F***CK. Xiao Xian, what do you mean? Are you saying that you can cure our illness with medicinal herbs? Why didn't you say so earlier? Why did you have to use such disgusting things like toilet paper? Li Tai also looked at Li Zishuan with a face full of anger. The other three children didn't have much anger on their faces, but they also cast their gazes on Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan crossed his arms in front of his chest and said calmly, "Curing a disease is like putting out a fire. You guys were already half a step into the gates of hell when you got cholera. It's already not easy to keep your lives. Cheng Chumo, you still have the time to complain about this and that. I think someone didn't suffer enough last night, right?" Cheng Chumo subconsciously covered his chrysanthemum. He didn't want to experience that feeling of collapsing again. However, he was still a little angry at Li Zishuan for tricking them. Then why didn't you use a better treatment method? Aren't you torturing us on purpose? Li Zishuan rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "Do you know how to treat illnesses? Or do I know how to treat illnesses? How do you know this method isn't good? Originally, it would take at least 10 days to half a month for you to recover from this illness. However, after using this method and supplementing it with a decoction, you will be fully recovered within 5 days. Do you still think this method is not good?" Seeing Li Zishuan's reasonable and earnest look, Cheng Chumo was suddenly speechless. At this moment, Elder Wu brought a servant over with a bowl of medicine. "Marquis, the medicine is ready. Should I give it to His Highness?" Elder Wu bowed and said. Li Zishuan nodded and said, "Yes, according to the order, let them take it. This Marquis will come back later to see the results." "Yes." Elder Wu waved his hand at the servants, and Cheng Chumo and the others were forced to drink the decoction. Although the first two decoctions tasted bad, it was still bearable. But the last decoction, poof, pay. Damn, how could there be dirt in the medicine? Chin K, how do the servants in your residence brew the medicine? Cheng Chumo, who had just suffered from feces, was suddenly forced to drink a mouthful of dirt. This fellow could not bear it any longer. Li Zishuan frowned and said, "If you don't want to die of illness, swallow this medicine. Otherwise, in a few days, I will have to collect your corpse." Seeing that Li Zishuan did not seem to be joking, the patients in the room could not help but tremble. They quickly attacked the decoction. They had just suffered from feces, and now they had to eat dirt. Speaking of which, they were really unlucky today. However, they were still considered lucky. In comparison, the other cholera patients in the past 2 days were suffering too much. None of the medical officials dared to accept them when they were sent to the medical hall. Even if there were medical halls that dared to accept them, many people could not afford it. Moreover, even if they could afford it, there was no guarantee that the medical hall would be able to treat them. In just one day, hundreds and thousands of families were suddenly affected. Most people were helpless and could only prepare coffins for their loved ones who had suffered from cholera in advance. "Your Majesty, according to the county magistrate of the counties near Chang and City, there are now at least 800 families who have suffered from cholera. They cannot afford to treat the illness, and there are no medical halls among the people who can treat this illness. In the long run, as more and more people are infected with cholera, there is a high possibility that it will lead to a large-scale epidemic. When that time comes, it will be even more difficult to deal with if there is a mass uprising." In the backyard of the Prince of Wei's residence, Lier had just heard from Elder Wu that Li Tai's condition had improved. He was originally relieved, but Zhao Song came to report something to him. Lier's expression suddenly became serious. "Let's wait and see if the 3 prescriptions that Li Zishuan prescribed are really effective. If they are, we can promote them without restraint and stop the epidemic from spreading." Lier said softly, then said, "Let's go. Follow me to see how Chin K and the rest are doing now." After that, Lier led the 4 family members of the patients to the back room. "Your Majesty." When the servants inside and outside the house saw Lier come over, they all bowed and saluted. Li Zishuan heard the commotion outside and hurriedly came out to greet him. Lier waved his hand and gestured for everyone to rise. He then looked at Li Zixuan and asked directly, Li Zhanshu, how are the effects of the decoctions? Are Qin Ke and the rest fine now? Li Zixuan smiled and replied, Your Majesty, the effects of the decoctions are still being tested. However, based on the current condition of Qin Ke and Chu Mo, the cholera in their bodies has been reduced by more than half. If they continue to take the decoctions for 3 more days, there's a high chance that they can be completely cured. Li Zixuan was satisfied. Empress Zhang Sun, who was beside him, felt relieved when she heard Li Zixuan's assurance. After letting go of her worries, she felt a wave of sleepiness sweep over her, making it difficult for her to open her eyes. Thus, she informed Lier and went back to the palace to rest. Not bad, not bad. Qin Ke, how are you feeling now? Lier came to Li Tai's bed in a happy mood and asked with concern. In fact, he didn't need to ask this question. Just by looking, he could see that Li Tai's complexion was much better than before. Wasn't this enough to explain the problem? Li Tai propped himself up with his hands and replied to Lier, replying to Imperial Father, This son is much better now. Yamacho's medicine has helped us stop the diarrhea. At least now, we don't have to run to the outhouse every once in a while. Lier couldn't help but smile. At this time, Li Zixuan said to the court elders who were eagerly looking at their sons, Uncles, you can bring your sons home now. When you go back, don't forget to ask Wu Changshu for 5 days' worth of medicinal herbs. Feed the medicine on time every day. If there is any abnormal situation, send someone to inform me. This kid is on call. Chung Yaojin laughed and said, Haha, deal. Little Xian, I'll have to trouble you this time. Li Zixuan hurriedly said, It's my duty. The rest of the patient's family members thanked Li Zixuan one by one and then asked Lier to leave. After a while, the whole room returned to normal. Only Li Zixuan, Lier, and Li Tai were left, as well as the servants next to them. Chapter 9:16. Li Zhanshu, how long will it take for the medicine to take effect? Lier asked Li Zixuan with his hands behind his back after ordering all the servants to leave the room. Li Zixuan replied, Your Majesty, according to my estimation, the effect should be seen in the afternoon. By then, the frequency of Qin Ke's defecation will obviously decrease. If we keep taking the medicine in the morning and in the evening, she will definitely recover within 5 days. Are you that confident? Your Majesty, I am confident. If he had only deduced the prescription based on his own understanding of the herbs at the beginning, he might not have been 100% confident. However, now that he saw Li Tai and the rest gradually recover after being fumigated by the toilet, he was even more convinced of the old village doctor's prescription. Lier nodded imperceptibly and said, This time, the blue sparrow was suddenly attacked by cholera and almost lost her life. Thanks to your help, the Empress and I are very grateful. Whatever reward you want, just say it. Li Zixuan's eyes lit up but then dimmed. He sighed and said, Your Majesty, I heard that Qin Ke and Chonyo suffered from cholera because they drank the water from the Ba River. Is that true? Li Zixuan actually did not want the reward that was delivered to his mouth. Lier could not help being greatly surprised. Hearing Li Zixuan suddenly ask about this, he suppressed the doubts in his heart and said with a nod, Indeed so. I have already sent people to check on the recent meals in Qin Ke Mansion. There is nothing unusual. Also, I just received news that there are a few hundred more people suffering from cholera outside Chang'an City. Li Zixuan's heart sank and said, Therefore, I think that now is not the time to discuss the reward. The river is invisible and the pollution of the water source is the most difficult to control. When the time comes, the number of people suffering from cholera will definitely be more than this. The priority now is for the local government to step in and remind the people to pay attention to the hygiene of their drinking water to prevent more people from contracting cholera. Although he did not have the heart of a bodhisattva, he did not want to see too many people suffer. Since ancient times, cholera was an acute infectious disease that was always more important to prevent than to treat. If there was not a set of perfect preventive measures, when a number of cholera patients reached a certain level, it would be impossible to control the disease. Lier heard this and could not help but look at Li Zishuan in a new light. He secretly thought that this fellow was usually slippery and cunning, but when it came to critical moments, he was able to distinguish the severity. Not bad. I am very pleased that you can think of this. However, I have already ordered the governor to work together with the county magistrates of every county near Chang and city to inform the people not to drink the water from the Ba River. When your prescription is effective, I will let the Imperial Medical Department to prepare a batch of herbs and medicine ingredients and get it to the sick people free. Lier looked at Li Zishuan with a gratified expression. Unexpectedly, Li Zishuan shook his head and said, "Your Majesty, this solution does not solve the root of the problem. Although there are 8 rivers around Chang'an, namely Wei, Jing, Feng, Zhao, Bai, and Ba, and there are 5 canals in the city, namely the Longzhou Canal, Qingming Canal, Yuan Canal, Huang Canal, and Chao Canal. It can be said that the water source is abundant. Even without the Ba River, it can still satisfy the water needs of the people in and outside Chang'an City. However, Your Majesty, do not forget that these 8 rivers and the 5 canals are interconnected. As time passes, the water from the other rivers will also cause cholera. If Your Majesty wants to prohibit the people from drinking the river water, just the Ba River alone is far from enough. The Chang, and of this era, was not the same as the modern Xin. The surrounding areas were rich in water resources. Otherwise, it would not be enough to support this super city with a population of 2 million people. However, there was no running water in this era. The people's drinking water mainly came from the river. Therefore, Li Zishuan felt that Li Er's method was not reliable. The reason why the modern Xi and had a shortage of water resources and frequent droughts was mainly because of the Sui and Tang dynasties. The population of the Guangzhou area increased greatly. The Lus Plateau was overdeveloped and the rapid disappearance of forests. Of course, the most important reason was the war at the end of the Tang dynasty. After listening to Li Zishuan's words, Lier could not help but frown deeply. After thinking for a while, he glanced at Li Zishuan and said, "Looking at your confident appearance, you must have a plan in mind, right? Quickly say it. Don't keep me in suspense." Li Zishuan secretly rolled his eyes. He thought to himself, "Am I keeping you in suspense? This is called devising a strategy. Your Majesty, according to what I know, the reason why the murky river's water causes cholera is because there are microscopic life forms in the river that cause cholera. These life forms are very small and cannot be seen with the naked eye. When they enter the human body, they're usually killed by the acid secreted by the human stomach. However, there will always be a portion that survives. The portion that survives will invade the human intestines and multiply in an extremely short period of time, producing highly concentrated toxins that are very lethal. The specific symptoms are like Qin K's continuous vomiting and diarrhea yesterday." Li Zishuan began to instill modern medical theories into Li Er and Li Tai. Li Er could not help but be shocked. Li Tai could not help but tremble a few times. When he thought of the countless tiny creatures giving birth in his intestines, he felt terrified. Li Zishuan continued, "The lives of the people cannot be separated from water. Therefore, Your Majesty's method of prohibiting the people from drinking the river water is not a long-term solution. I feel that rather than this, it is better to encourage the people to boil the water before drinking. This will greatly reduce the possibility of them contracting cholera. Ancient people usually drank cold water. Only when the weather was cold would they boil the water to drink." Lier asked doubtfully, "If the water is boiled, will it kill the tiny creatures in the water?" Li Zishuan nodded and said, "Of course. In fact, it is not only these tiny creatures. Other things that can cause illness can also be killed by boiling the water." Lier nodded lightly, but in his heart, he was thinking to himself that he should instruct the people to boil all the water in the palace in the future. Just now, When Li Zixuan said that the tiny creatures were multiplying in Li Tai's stomach, he was disgusted. He, Li Er, was the emperor. He would not allow these little things to offend his imperial prestige. As you said, I will instruct the people in a while. Remember to write what you just said in Tang Daily later. It is best to let more people know the pros and cons. Today, Tang Daily had become a force of public opinion that could not be ignored. Many times, the imperial court's decrees had to be publicized through the newspaper. Li Zixuan cupped his hands and promised. Even if Old Li did not say so, he would have done so. That, Yamacho, where did the tiny creatures in the river that caused cholera that you mentioned earlier come from? At this time, Li Tai, who was half leaning on the bed, asked weakly. Li Zixuan turned his head and looked at the child sympathetically. He said, according to my guess, it is very likely that the water in Bar River was contaminated by the feces of the patients who had cholera before. That is why there were these tiny creatures. After that, it happened that you guys... Chapter 9:17. Sigh. This child, it's rare for him to be muddle-headed. Isn't it better to be muddle-headed sometimes? Li Zixuan rode Whitey on the streets of Chang. In his mind, he was still recalling Li Tai's "I ate shit" expression. Li Zixuan couldn't help but sigh. This child really didn't know how to pretend to be muddle-headed at critical moments. He insisted on getting to the bottom of the matter, and in the end, he got to the bottom of the matter. What he said just now wasn't a tease Li Tai. The most common cause of cholera infection was from drinking water contaminated with feces. This wasn't something Li Zixuan made up. Doctor, please save my son. I'm willing to be your slave for the rest of my life to repay you. I beg you. I'll kowtow to you. My Shaoan is only 4 years old. I beg you. Just as Li Zixuan was swaying and letting his imagination run wild, he suddenly heard a woman crying and begging on the street. Li Zixuan instantly came back to his senses, and then he urged his horse to go in the direction of the sound. Sigh, you hurry up and get up. I've already told you that your son's illness can't be cured by anyone. You should prepare for his funeral as soon as possible. This was a medical clinic. Li Zixuan looked up and saw that it was called the Hanging Pot Hall. Li Zixuan had heard of it before. It was an extremely famous clinic in Chang'an City. The doctor in charge was the imperial physician of the previous dynasty, and his medical skills were quite good. This woman probably went to many clinics and was rejected, so she came to the Hanging Pot Hall. Facing this last life-saving straw, it was very difficult for her to let go. No, doctor, my son is only 4 years old. Please do a good deed and save him. My husband and I will be your slave for the rest of our lives. I beg you. The woman was dressed in sackcloth, and her hair was messy. In front of her lay a child with a strong head. The other man knelt on the ground with her and kowtowed to the old man in front of the clinic, saying, Master, please forgive me. Dr. Lin, your medical skills are so high. I'm sure you have a way to save my son. Although I don't have much money, I still have 20 mu of Yonya farmland. I can give it all to you, as long as you can save my Shaoan. This was truly a huge loss. In this era, to the farmers, the land was their life. It was hard to imagine how the family would live without the land. Even if the child was cured, what could they do? Did that man not understand this? Of course, he understood, but at this time, he couldn't care less. How many times have I told you? Your son is suffering from cholera. Do you know about cholera? This disease can't be cured. The old man was annoyed by the couple's entanglement. He said angrily, then turned around and left with a flick of his sleeves. Only then did the crowd realize that the child on the ground was suffering from cholera. One by one, they retreated far away in fear. Seeing the old doctor turn around and leave, the woman cried in despair. Oh, my Porin, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have let you play by the river. I'm the one who should die. I say, you two should carry the child back and prepare for his funeral. This old man encountered cholera several decades ago, and no one could cure it. You two are still young. Have another child in the future. At this time, an old man couldn't bear it and came up to comfort the woman. His words made the woman cry even more sadly. The man was at a loss. He didn't know whether to comfort her or not. Seeing this scene, Lisa Schwan, who was not far away, sighed softly. No matter which era it was, as long as one person in an ordinary family fell ill, it could directly bring down the entire family. Lisa Schwan was hesitant. If he saved the child, it was very likely that hundreds and thousands of cholera patients would come to him for treatment. However, the effectiveness of his prescription was still in the testing stage. If he gave it to so many people rashly and an accident happened, it would be a great sin. Generally speaking, a person's life wouldn't be in immediate danger after contracting cholera. Most people could hold on for 3 to 5 days. By that time, the results of Lisa Schwan's prescription would be out. However, the child on the ground was only 4 years old. Looking at his complexion, if he wasn't treated in time, he wouldn't even last for 2 days. Save him. Even if there's trouble, I, Lisa Schwan, will take care of it. Lisa Schwan gritted his teeth and was about to dismount from his horse to talk to them. In the end, he was still soft-hearted. However, 2 more couples came. Lisa Schwan recognized them. They were Old Neo and his wife from the Han family village and Mei Jun and his wife from the Plum village. Where's Miracle Dr. Lin? Miracle Dr. Lin, please save my child. Miracle Dr. Lin, please save my child. Old Neo and his wife were pulling the bullock cart. Brothers De Neo and Heir Neo were lying on the bullock cart. As for Mei Jun's wife, Han Xiaoyun, she was carrying a 1-year-old child. Her face was covered in tears, and she looked very anxious. Lisa Schwan's heart sank. Only then did he realize how troublesome the situation was. Sigh. 2 more families came to seek treatment. This is the 10th family today. How many people have contracted cholera? Who knows? What a sin. Look at the child. He's only a little over a year old. How are his parents taking care of him? That's right. However, it's useless to beg now. Miracle Dr. Lin may be skilled in medicine, but he can't cure cholera. Sigh. It's a pity that this child is still so young. The onlookers pointed at the Neo couple and Mei Jun from afar and whispered. Of course, most of them sympathized with them. Hey, look, the hanging pot hall closed early. At this moment, someone exclaimed. The hanging pot hall had closed early in the morning. That was rare. Looks like the hanging pot hall is afraid of being harassed by cholera patients. Sigh. Even the hanging pot hall is closed. Are these cholera patients just going to wait for death? Let's go back. Don't get infected. The onlookers watched for a while and dispersed. Lisa Schwan picked up a stone from the ground and threw it at Mei Jun. Ouch. Who threw that at me? Mei Jun covered his head and turned around. He was shocked. Marquis? Boo-hoo. Mei Jun, what are you looking around for? What are you doing looking around for? Han Xiaoyun said angrily as she wiped her tears and pinched Mei Jun's waist. Hey, Xiaoyun, let go. Marquis is looking for me. Take care of our Huan heir. I'll be back soon. Mei Jun pulled Han Xiaoyun's hand away and whispered to her. Then, he walked towards Lisa Schwan. Marquis, Mei Jun said in a low voice as he came to Lisa Schwan. Bring your Huan heir and Uncle Neo to Yinshan to find me. If possible, bring that couple too. I might be able to save your child's life, but don't tell anyone about it, Lisa Schwan said in a low voice. Then, he ignored Mei Jun's confused, shocked, and ecstatic expression and left. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.